I'm a disabled veteran who, unfortunately, lost my job due to the ongoing pandemic. As a result, I'm at home while my wife continues to work. Our son was born shortly before COVID appeared, and he's now a year old. During this time, I've taken on all household responsibilities, from cooking and cleaning to doing the laundry, to ensure everything runs smoothly. I've also been looking after our 9-year-old and 1-year-old kids, helping with their schoolwork and preparing their meals. My ex-wife and I had a tough upbringing, and we both wanted to give our children the kind of upbringing we missed out on. However, she had our last child to try to save our relationship, which was failing. I supported her decision to work more for extra income, but when the pandemic started, our financial situation worsened, and we had to move in with my mother to save money and reduce her workload. I didn't know she'd been seeing someone else since March. I began to suspect in April, and by my birthday in May, I was sure. Her infidelity and lack of affection left me feeling completely alone. Now, my kids and I live with my mom, while she moved in with her boyfriend. It's been almost a month, but the pain of separation still lingers. My daughter has distanced herself from her mother, and my son shows no interest in her, not even asking for basic things like milk. They seem to have moved on from the initial pain, but I still feel terribly lonely. It's like walking beside someone, sharing a story, and then turning around to find that they've disappeared. 14 years feel like they've gone to waste. To cope with this, I've focused on training, and am proud to say that I've finally dropped below 200 pounds after many years. Now, my main motivation is to keep moving forward for the sake of my children and deal with my emotions. I've also started writing poetry, but since she kept lying about her ongoing connection with the other person, I realized it's pointless to communicate with her. Despite the lingering pain, I hold hope for the future. Finding a lawyer is tough because my mom has trouble finding someone she can trust. I want to be careful and have full trust in the lawyer's professional abilities. Though my brother and mother have been a tremendous source of support through all my difficulties, I'm seeking advice here. She left me for a colleague, which initially led me to plan a separation agreement and consult a lawyer, but the high cost prevented that. I've taken a positive step by attending consultations for myself and my daughter, which is a good development. To prepare for school, I've decided that she'll study reading and math workbooks to get back on track with her education. Meanwhile, I'm in thought and seeking advice. My soon-to-be ex-wife is currently in a psychiatric hospital, and while I hope for her recovery, I'm not sure it's wise for her to become more involved in our children's lives. She chose her partner over our 9-year-old and 1-year-old kids, and I'm concerned she might do the same with them at 10 and 2. While I initially wanted to support her, I'm now focused on my own recovery and not maintaining contact with her, as her progress could hinder mine. I genuinely want her to get better, but I don't want to be present in this situation. Does that make me a bad person? I refrain from asking about her hospitalization reasons, but based on my past experience as a firefighter, I think it may be related to doing bad things. I plan to start the trial as soon as possible and stay by her side, sincerely hoping for her recovery, but I can't hide my anger at her for putting me in such a difficult situation. My children don't know the current situation, which deeply concerns me. To keep ourselves occupied, I organized a drawing evening, trying to understand why life has to be so tough. I see that our little son has suffered greatly from this ordeal. He's developed separation anxiety, which increases every time his mother visits him. Unfortunately, she doesn't seem to notice these problems appearing suddenly after several weeks of absence. This situation is unbearable, and dealing with it alone is incredibly difficult. I miss the person she used to be, and it's a tough journey. Our daughter still unconditionally follows her mother's example. She admires her and wants to be like her. I understand that she feels some resentment due to the current circumstances, but I can't fully grasp her emotions. Over the past 2 months, my ex has visited them 4 or 5 times, even allowing them to spend the night at her new place. However, her messages to our daughter are one-sided, with all the conversations initiated by her. Upon reflection, I realized that I had overlooked these signs for a long time. It seemed like our daughter constantly showed disinterest, barely noticing my presence and responding with only one word. I chose to ignore this, but now I see that all the signs were there. Her mobile phone was always face down, and she often found excuses to go back to work, showing a lack of interest in communicating with me. During that time, I played the role of a babysitter, while she enjoyed parties and a full-fledged relationship with her boyfriend. I finally realized this on my birthday, when she did absolutely nothing, even though she had always shown care and effort. This led me to start an investigation, and I discovered she had been dating her colleague since March. In February, we went on a family trip, and at that time, I thought everything was fine. But I've learned to trust my instincts and not be blinded by her actions again. Despite this, I genuinely hope she finds well-being and happiness for the sake of our children. I remain committed to prioritizing our children. In an effort to maintain a healthy co-parenting dynamic, I've decided to avoid contact with her and focus solely on our children's issues. Unfortunately, she keeps trying to reach out to me as if nothing has changed. Despite my initial attempts to respond politely, I've become increasingly upset and responded with anger and hostility as I'm not ready to talk to her yet. Before cutting off contact, I frequently sent her photos of our children, hoping she'd understand she was leaving. It appears her relationship with her partner didn't work out as expected, and she's now in the hospital. She wants to play a more active role in our children's lives, but it's challenging since she lives an hour away and has a busy schedule. I used to support her after work, but now I refuse to be her backup. I know my worth, and I deserve more than being someone's second or third choice. Once she emotionally recovers, we can work on a healthy co-parenting dynamic. I won't save her now as I couldn't do it before. After speaking with her hospital doctor, I learned she'll be discharged soon. While I feel guilty, I believe she should find her own way since she chose to leave me and the children. The thought that she might do bad things herself causes me great anxiety, making it hard to breathe. Additionally, my ex's partner in love affairs tried to contact me on Facebook, but I blocked him and took a screenshot as evidence, breaking my rule of no contact just to inform my ex. She showed no interest or concern and didn't feel it was her responsibility to deal with him. Technically, it isn't. I hoped she would resolve this issue on my behalf, but instead, she explained at length how she was trying to improve the situation for the sake of our children. This incident taught me a valuable lesson. Never break the no-contact rule, even if something hurts you. I've done well with this, maintaining a month of no contact. I'm still upset that a certain person is trying to follow me, but honestly, I don't care about him at all. My anger is primarily related to the consequences of my relationship with my ex, and such situations only hinder my progress. I'm consumed by deep anger and resentment towards the woman I once thought I'd love forever. Thoughts of her often visit my mind, and every time they appear, I utter curses after them. I'm not that kind of person, never harboring ill will towards others, but my ex-wife's presence makes me furious. The hardest part is maintaining a facade of consent in front of my children. Though I refrain from mentioning her, there are times when my daughter remembers her name, and in those moments, it takes all my strength not to speak ill of my ex and remain indifferent. I don't want the person she left me for to hinder my progress. While he took my wife, I've firmly decided not to let him obstruct my path. I'm determined to protect my emotional well-being from their interference. Despite them not being very pleasant people, I want them to stay away from me and my children. On weekends, my daughter and I enjoy movie nights, and during the week, my son and I go for daily walks while his sister is at school. Being a dad brings me great joy, but it leaves me with very little time for myself. My days are filled with training, and the only adult I truly trust is my Veterans Affairs consultant. Right now, my main focus is on treating post-traumatic stress disorder. My constant thoughts about my ex make it hard for me to concentrate on my responsibilities, especially in raising our children. It's painful to realize how taken advantage of I feel. In the past, I devoted so much to support her career climb. I was by her side during her long work hours, and even gave her foot massages when she returned. All I'm left with now is a sense of worthlessness, as if my efforts meant nothing. I wonder if others are going through a similar situation, and, if so, how they're managing. Engaging in physical activities like training and kickboxing has provided some relief. though it seems like only a small part of what I need to heal. In an attempt to move forward, I registered on the Match website, even though I recognize that I'm not emotionally ready for a new relationship. Recently, I made the decision to step out of my comfort zone and be more honest with myself. Recovering from infidelity is undoubtedly a tough journey. A few months ago, I came across a book called Stop Being Mr. Nice Guy, which delves into the white knight theory and ways to overcome it. Reflecting on my past actions, I can acknowledge that I fell into some of these traps, but I don't believe that my actions were solely driven by the desire to earn knight points. After my service in the Army, I continued to maintain the uniform and ensure everything was in order. It had become second nature to me, perhaps in the hope of easing my partner's work fatigue even just a little. Ultimately, I've always been someone who likes to solve problems and find solutions, with or without her. I feel that being considerate and helping others ultimately didn't benefit me. I've always been the kind of person who leaves a situation cleaner than I found it. While serving in the fire department, I lived with other guys and learned how to clean up after myself. However, I began to realize that maybe I was too kind. But is it a bad thing to appreciate kindness? Unfortunately, it seems challenging to come across truly kind individuals, but it appears to be common to encounter pain. It's disheartening to see my ex pursuing a new lifestyle, especially when, after just 6 months, she's already seeking full custody of our children and spousal support. I'm eagerly anticipating the upcoming trial. Currently, my primary thoughts revolve around post-traumatic stress disorder, the well-being of our children, and my hidden anger towards my future ex-spouse. While I mainly focus on the first two, I wish for time to pass more quickly. I understand the importance of being present in the moment, but it's tough for me to shake off this feeling of emptiness within. Recently, my wife told me that our daughter had expressed an interest in self-mutilation due to her refusal to communicate with her. Throughout November, they didn't communicate. A few days later, a deputy sheriff called me, requesting that I surrender a firearm registered to my wife, as she's not allowed to have it. This situation makes me question whether my attempts at reconciliation are naive, even though I removed the block after she revealed her thoughts about doing bad things. Believing that such statements should be taken seriously, we resumed correspondence. However, I suspect she's still spending time with her boyfriend and using this situation as a way to spend time with our kids. Given these circumstances, I understand the need to approach her words with caution and a great deal of skepticism. Despite this, I'm uncertain about the sincerity of her intentions. If she were to end her current relationship, regardless of whether she's with him or not, I would consider reconciliation. However, I'd require her to continue with the divorce process according to plan and provide written confirmation of my full custody of our children. I've already filed my response to her divorce application, and we're currently awaiting a court date. I also suspect that she's aware of her unfavorable position in court, which may worsen her situation. She mentioned that her family no longer communicates with her, a fact I can confirm since I'm still in touch with many of them. Furthermore, she expressed a desire to find a job in our city, which I hope she'll consider. Tonight we took our kids to the movies. The therapist who's helping our daughter expressed concerns about her engaging in, so I took swift action. Even our 1-year-old child is overjoyed that his mother has returned to him. Personally, I feel emotionally distant. On the flip side, I'm using the dating app Bumble, and while I've had some decent connections, nothing serious has developed. There are a few people I'd like to form deeper connections with, but the reality is that most people aren't eager to get involved with someone responsible for raising 2 children. What's more, I worry about the possibility that after months of building a meaningful connection with someone, my daughter might reject them. To be honest, if my daughter had rejected me, I would have ended this relationship. After our breakup, my life started improving. I've been attending therapy, monitoring my diet, and even practicing kung fu. Since she left, I've experienced significant personal growth, and I'm uncertain whether it would be unwise to consider reuniting as a family. It's important to note that she's currently attending therapy and taking medication, which is a significant factor to consider. She's also expressed interest in both of us attending couples therapy. The pace at which events are unfolding feels overwhelming. If it turns out that she's pregnant with someone else's child and is trying to manipulate me into raising that child, I won't participate in such a situation. I have many thoughts and doubts swirling in my head, and I'd greatly appreciate any guidance. I'm not certain about what I want at the moment. While I do feel a desire to reconcile with her, I'm also aware of her capabilities. My daughter's well-being significantly influences my decision-making process, so I need to proceed with caution. I can't make decisions based solely on emotions, but I must admit that my children's happiness is of utmost importance to me. If I had the opportunity, I believe it would be valuable to invest another 10 years in a relationship with my ex and put in a genuine effort. It's worth mentioning that although my ex is currently employed and I am not, my status as a disabled veteran with a low rating during our marriage has prompted me to seek help from Veterans Services. They recommended an increase in my rating, which could potentially lead to me earning more than my ex. In any case, such a rating increase would be highly beneficial for me. I tend to agree that becoming the primary caregiver for our children is the more likely outcome. However, given her recent attempts at doing bad things and the fact that I had to hand over her firearm, I believe this strengthens my case for gaining more custody. It's not just about the children's well-being, it's also about the foundation I've worked hard to build. I'm on a positive life path, with or without her, and I'm determined not to look back with regrets, feeling that I didn't do everything possible to keep my family together. She claims to attend therapy 3 times a week and take medication. In our 16 years of marriage, she never engaged in self-mutilation, but after our separation, she made 3 attempts. It's challenging for me to discern what to believe. She's aware of my past as a firefighter and the traumatic situations I often encountered. It's possible that she's using this knowledge as a form of manipulation. However, based on my personal experience, even if people don't resort to ending their lives in this way, they often inflict severe physical bad influence on themselves. Memories of the blood I witnessed still haunt me, and the taste of copper remains vivid in my memory. It was incomprehensible to see a physically strong and muscular man brought to tears, standing in his undergarments, holding onto his wife. I was left in utter perplexity. I recently had a conversation with my daughter, and she expressed a desire for our family to become whole again, with all 4 of us together. I told her that I wouldn't be able to forgive her mother if she continued the relationship and advised her not to set her hopes too high. I've realized that if I continue with the current approach, completely cutting off all contact, it will also affect the children. It seems to me that my negativity towards their mother is evident and has an impact on them. She may not understand the immense effort required for reconciliation, but that's my concern. I can't allow my ex to dictate the pace of my progress, just as I can't allow my kids to determine the outcome. Restoring our family at this point necessitates me setting an example and taking the initiative. It's crucial to demonstrate to my children that I won't succumb to emotional manipulation. Reuniting with this woman won't fix our family. It will only worsen the situation. This thought has been haunting me. How will my daughter perceive the relationship? If she witnesses it, the toxicity might persist, and if her mother leaves again, the consequences will be even more devastating. Additionally, my daughter might inadvertently attract the wrong people into her life because she has already encountered such behavior. On the other hand, this situation can serve as an opportunity to teach them that love is not perfect. It's not a typical romantic comedy scenario, but if my ex is genuinely seeking guidance from therapists, I believe we have a chance. Even if the likelihood of success is just 1%, I'm willing to attempt to restore our family. Of course, I understand perfectly well that all of this could backfire. I realize that if I don't make changes and if she doesn't improve, our relationship is undoubtedly destined to fail. However, if she continues with therapy, takes her medications, and finds self-awareness, we have a chance to overcome everything. In the future, when our children have grown up, and if we decide to go our separate ways, that's something I can accept. If we assume that we're raising them properly, following the values we've set, then I'll evaluate her actions to assess her character. She claims she's no longer involved with the AP, affair partner. She states that she's been undergoing therapy and taking medication since July, explaining that her recent lifestyle hasn't been as pleasant as I assumed, and that she's been feeling sad for several months. I tend to attribute these events to her mental health disorder, so I believe it's necessary to consult with her therapist before considering the possibility of a real reconciliation. If she's diagnosed with bipolar disorder, or if it's confirmed that it was a major depressive episode and she expresses remorse, we might have an opportunity. But if she desires an open relationship, it's better for both of us to move on. I'm truly grateful for all of you for sharing your thoughts and perspectives, as it seems you all understand the pain caused by trauma. I've come to realize that she was using manipulation to push me towards reconciliation. She informed me that after our breakup, she made 3 attempts at doing bad things, and currently, she attends therapy 3 times a week. In our individual talks and group discussions, she mentioned that she's taking medication. Even though I haven't personally spoken to her therapist, I suspect she might be struggling with high levels of depression and codependency. She expressed her intention to quit her current job and shared her desire to find a place nearby to spend more time with the children. She also mentioned how she feels a lack of family in her life. After our recent trip to the movies, she visited us several times, which brought great joy to our daughter. This made me decide to break the period of no contact. The school psychotherapist is worried that my daughter might engage in doing bad things, which is a result of issues stemming from her mother's rejection. On a positive note, my son seems to be doing well, but I can't help but miss her and wish to reunite our family. I remember how much she loved me, especially since we've been together since we were 18. Recently, she asked me out on a date, and although I agreed because she's making an effort, deep down, I understand that I'm not emotionally ready for this. It's important to emphasize that I'm committed to not having a relationship with her. If it were to come to that, I would insist on a paternity test. I won't be deceived or take responsibility for someone else's child. I've made it clear to her that I'd only consider reconciliation if we divorced and I gained full custody of the children. Obtaining 100% custody is my main goal now. With that, if she continues her relationship with her partner and complications arise, I'll have full control, and she'll be able to move on. Furthermore, I'm still active on dating apps. I won't deactivate them until I'm certain she's not seeing anyone else. Additionally, just yesterday, I felt youthful and alive. There wasn't a clear reason for my happiness, but it gave my self-esteem a boost. I usually find myself attracted to people who are a bit too tough for me. I'm sure many of you can relate to my experiences, knowing it's often an uphill battle. But I feel compelled to keep trying for the sake of my children. Yet, I'm incredibly puzzled when she says she was unhappy after our separation. It's hard to reconcile that with her actions, especially when she cheated on me and left our children for someone else. If I were younger, I might have reacted with more anger, but now I'm contemplating the possibility of reconciling with my father, despite our different problem-solving approaches. I hope this decision will lead to a positive outcome, but I'm uncertain about the future. To the best of my knowledge, there's no indication that she's pregnant, and there's no reason to suspect it. Although she appeared hesitant, she has agreed to 100% custody if we reconcile. She insists she's no longer involved with the affair partner or anyone else. But at this stage, it's challenging for me to trust her fully. We exchange apologies through text messages, and we haven't managed to have a one-on-one conversation without the children present. She's expressed regret for seeking confirmation from someone else, but hasn't directly apologized for the betrayal itself. Until she explicitly admits remorse for the betrayal, I will assume she doesn't regret it. On a positive note, she has agreed to attend couples therapy, which is a significant step, given her previous resistance to therapy. This was one of the reasons I hesitated to seek help for my post-traumatic stress disorder. I understand that significant challenges lie ahead, as my heart is still mending. But I'm determined to rebuild my family, no matter the difficulties. I sincerely make this commitment. While she may have broken her vow, I continue to hold firm to the vows I've made throughout my life. Reflecting on what I miss and cherish, I genuinely miss her unwavering dedication to caring for our children. Her caring and affectionate nature made her an exceptional mother for our daughter. I also appreciate her witty and sarcastic humor. The way she pronounces my name holds a special place in my heart, as does her unique fragrance. Her look when I'm about to make a foolish decision fills me with affection. Her belief that I'm an excellent cook brings me joy. Additionally, her ability to be kind and harmonious with others is truly admirable. Ultimately, I'm captivated by her determination to tackle unfamiliar concepts, even if she doesn't fully understand them. I realize how much I value her uniqueness, which aligns with my own. I deeply miss her presence and wholeheartedly apologize for past mistakes. If we end up in court together, the best outcome I can hope for is shared custody with her having overnight visits every weekend. However, my top priority is obtaining full custody of our children. I fully accept the responsibility for any potential setbacks, but 100% custody would provide me with peace of mind, knowing I've done everything in my power. Even with my attempts at reconciliation, I understand the importance of securing the best future for our children. I consistently felt anxiety, realizing that I was only being used as a means for her to see the children. Despite this, she visited the children only a few times and never took care of them for extended periods. I naively hoped that she could become the same mother she was to our children, but she didn't fulfill the role of a mother. Instead, she appeared as someone who feels guilty from time to time and wishes to visit the life I've built. Currently, we are not officially divorced since she filed for divorce last June, and I filed my response. Since then, I haven't received any updates from the court. I decided to wait before taking any further action because in my state, if a parent leaves and doesn't contact their children for a year, they can be accused of child abandonment. In my view, that's exactly what happened, and I hope the lawyer and the judge will agree, granting me sole custody. My dilemma is that she's trying to get better. She shows a desire to visit the children, especially our son, but seems to have refused to rebuild her relationship with her daughter. While I understand that change takes time, it's challenging for me to trust her actions and decisions. None of the above questions relate to our romantic relationship. Should I wait for a court message or take the initiative to consult with a lawyer and file a claim for termination of parental rights, seeking sole custody? If I decide to seek legal assistance, I'll be committed to taking significant steps. I must admit I acted naively, trusting this woman for so long. I genuinely believe that people have inherent goodness. Even if someone stumbles and loses their way, it doesn't mean they are entirely lost. Should I distance myself from my spouse to shield our children from additional trauma? Thankfully, my life with the children is going well. I receive online counseling at a local veterans rehabilitation center, which greatly helps me cope with post-traumatic stress disorder. Recognizing the difficulties my daughter faces, I arranged for her to meet with a counselor provided by her. Unfortunately, my little boy, at the age of 2, still misses his mother and occasionally asks about her. To comfort him, I explain that she's at work when she's not around. It takes him some time to get comfortable with her presence. I'm concerned that her continuous involvement in his life at this crucial stage might exacerbate his future problems and difficulties. Every morning we have a lovely ritual of reading and singing children's songs. Throughout the day, we engage in fun activities until his sister returns home. It's a joy to witness his progress. Every day he learns a new word, and overall, he radiates genuine happiness. In anticipation of potential consequences of abandonment at his age, I'm teaching him soothing techniques like breathing exercises and engaging hand games. As for me, I've dared to explore dating apps and met several potential partners. But I understand that I'm not yet ready for a serious relationship. For now, I take solace in focusing on my personal growth, dedicating time to exercise and therapy. I handle the upbringing and care of my children solo, even though full custody comes with some downsides. I don't expect to receive alimony from my ex-spouse, which, although I wouldn't mind, would certainly help financially. Another issue is my son possibly holding a grudge against me for not letting his mother in and not providing her with assistance. But I believe it's in the children's best interest for this dishonest and mentally unwell woman to be absent from our lives. Now, 7 months have passed. The divorce process was lengthy and painful, during which my ex-wife caused herself physical bad influence and had a long recovery. But ultimately, I've cut this woman out of my life and the lives of my children. I received a court order preventing her from approaching me and the children. She is currently in a mental health facility, and I'm doing everything I can to ensure my children lead happy lives and move on from the negative impact of their mother.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
I arrived home from work at my usual time to find my wife of 6 years ironing one of her cocktail dresses. My first thought was that we must have plans tonight, which immediately got me excited. I always loved taking her out. She always looked stunning whenever we went out, and seeing other guys steal envious glances at her gave me a bit of a confidence boost. After all, she was with me, and all they could do was admire from afar. With her rich dark skin, deep brown eyes, long flowing hair, and athletic build, she was absolutely gorgeous. She'd been on the college crew team and still maintained some of that toned, athletic physique, though she now preferred running and aerobics over rowing. Before I could ask what our plans were, she spoke up, her attention focused on her ironing. "You'll never guess who I ran into today," Becky said, keeping a steady rhythm with the iron. "Timothy." "Timothy?" I searched my memory, trying to place the name. Only one person came to mind. "Timothy? Your high school boyfriend, Timothy?" I asked cautiously. "Yes. Can you believe it? Just out of nowhere, after all these years." For context, Timothy had been Becky's boyfriend during her last 2 years of high school. I'd never met him. Becky and I didn't cross paths until college, but I'd heard plenty about him. According to her, they were deeply in love and only broke up because they went to colleges on opposite sides of the country. When Becky and I met during freshman orientation, we clicked right away, but I had to settle for friendship initially since she wasn't ready for a new relationship. By the end of freshman year, she finally agreed to date me, but that summer, she returned to her hometown. I visited her once for a few days and met her large, traditional Mexican family who, to my surprise, welcomed me, the white guy with darker Italian skin, quite easily. Still, I couldn't help but wonder if Timothy had made an appearance during that summer. Neither of us brought him up, so I assumed he was part of her past and hoped he was out of her mind as well. "So, where did you run into him?" I asked casually. "In the lobby of my office building," she replied. "I was coming back from lunch, and there he was. At first, I wasn't sure if it was really him, but then he saw me, and he recognized me right away. Turns out he's a rep for a pharmaceutical company and visits this area every other Wednesday to meet with some of the doctors in the building. Isn't that wild?" "Wild?" I echoed, trying to match her enthusiasm, though her excitement felt a bit too much for my liking. I mean, what are the odds of us just bumping into each other like that? It's crazy. Anyway, we're having dinner tonight to catch up. That explained the cocktail dress. I didn't love the idea of a third wheel joining us if we were going out. I always enjoyed having her all to myself, but if this was a special occasion, I could make an effort to be gracious and make her happy. "Oh, okay. When do I need to be ready?" I asked. She stopped ironing and turned to me, a look of surprise on her face. "Oh, no, honey. I didn't mean we're all having dinner. It's just him and me." My stomach sank. "Just you and him? Why not bring me along? Why wouldn't you want me there?" He asked if I'd like to have dinner and catch up, and I said yes. "We'll just be reminiscing about old times. I don't want to worry about what you might think, or if you'd feel uncomfortable hearing about things from before we met. I just want to talk freely. Besides, you'd probably be bored. But you know I only love you, baby. Honey, it's completely inappropriate for a married woman to go out alone with another man, especially an ex. Even if nothing happens, imagine how it would look if someone we know saw you out with him." "Ronald, it's not a date," she said, her tone turning defensive. "It's just two old friends catching up over dinner." "I can't believe you're making such a big deal out of this." She set the iron down, inspecting her dress for wrinkles. "If it's not a date," I countered, "then why are you pulling out one of your sexy cocktail dresses?" "You know I like to dress up when I go out," she shot back. "It doesn't mean anything. You're acting like you don't trust me." "It's not about trust," I replied firmly. "It's about respect. How would you feel if I told you I was having dinner with an ex-girlfriend and said you couldn't come?" "I'd say that's fine," she responded quickly, "because I trust you and know you love only me." I didn't buy that for a second. "Becky, this isn't okay with me. You're not going to dinner with Timothy by yourself. Either you don't go or I go with you." That struck a nerve. You're not my father, Ronald. You're my husband. I'm a grown woman, and you don't get to dictate what I can or can't do. I'm going, and you're not, and if you don't like it, that's too bad. Grabbing her dress, she stormed into the bedroom and locked the door behind her. I sighed, pulled a beer from the fridge, and sat at the kitchen table, trying to make sense of what had just happened. We'd always worked through disagreements by talking things out until we found common ground. Neither of us had ever flatly refused to compromise like this. When she finally came out, she looked breathtaking, too breathtaking for what she was about to do, at least in my opinion. As she walked past me, she paused to plant a quick kiss on my cheek. "We can talk about this more when I get home, okay?" she said softly. I wasn't having it. "We've already talked about it. You've made your position perfectly clear. You're going to do whatever you want, and my feelings don't matter. At least now I know where we stand. Just don't forget to use a protection." She froze, her eyes blazing with anger. "I'm not going to sleep with him, you son of a bitch. It's just dinner." "Damn you," she snapped before storming out and slamming the door behind her. I went to bed early, trying to stop my mind from wandering to where she was or what they might be discussing. Around 10:30 p.m., I heard her come in. She headed straight to the bathroom, but since she typically showered at night, I didn't think much of it. A few minutes later, she slid under the covers beside me, her bare skin warm against mine. Leaning in close, she whispered softly in my ear, "Baby, I could use some tonight. How about a little makeup sex?" she murmured. I turned to face her, my expression flat. "Honestly," I said, "the idea of you getting all worked up with Timothy and then coming home to me doesn't exactly appeal. I'd just be wondering who you were really thinking about. And besides, I don't think we've actually made up yet." I rolled over, signaling the end of the conversation, but she wasn't about to let it go. What she said next, though, caught me off guard. "Well, would you rather I got turned on by you and then went to have sex with him?" she shot back. Without turning to face her, I replied evenly, "So you're admitting you got turned on being with him?" "No, that's not what I meant," she stammered. "All I'm saying is that no matter what, I'm coming home to you. I love you, damn it, and I don't see why you can't understand that or trust me." She wasn't getting it. I sat up, meeting her gaze. "And I don't see why you can't understand why this bothers me," I said firmly. "No matter who he was to you back then, you're my wife now. I think my feelings should matter. They always have before. But now that St. Timothy's back in town, it feels like I'm just an obstacle for you to ignore, so you can do whatever you want." She looked at me, momentarily taken aback, and for a brief second, it seemed like she finally understood how deeply hurt I was. Her shoulders sagged, and she lowered her head. "You're right, baby," she said softly. "I'm sorry. I should have been more considerate of your feelings. I got caught up in the excitement of seeing him again and forgot who really matters to me. Can you forgive me?" Relieved that she seemed to understand, I pulled her into my arms. "Of course, I forgive you, honey." She looked up at me with her beautiful brown eyes, now soft and full of sincerity. "Can we make love now?" We could, and we did. I thought that was the end of it and put the whole situation out of my mind. That is, until 2 weeks later. Becky called me to say she'd be working late, explaining it was for a special project she needed to finish. Coincidentally, it was a Wednesday, the same day Timothy supposedly came through town on his usual schedule. I couldn't shake the nagging feeling of suspicion. On my way home from work, I decided to swing by her office, bringing a couple of sandwiches as a thoughtful surprise for dinner. I signed in at the building's security desk and headed up to her floor. Becky worked in the front office of a major insurance company, and in the 3 years she'd been there, this was the first time she'd ever mentioned needing to stay late. The entry door was locked since it was after hours, so I knocked. The door was glass, and as soon as she approached, she'd be able to see me. I half expected the office to be empty, but there she was, seated at her desk, focused on her work. When she looked up and spotted me, her face lit up with that beautiful smile I adored. "Hey, baby. What a nice surprise," she said, walking over to greet me with a kiss. "What brings you here?" "I thought I'd bring you a sandwich for dinner," I said. "Figured we could still have dinner together, even with you working late." "That's so sweet of you," she replied. "Let's eat, but let's make it quick. The more time I spend not working, the longer I'll have to stay." We spent about 15 minutes eating together, chatting about our days. Then I kissed her goodbye and left, leaving her to finish up. On the drive home, I felt a bit silly for having doubted her. Maybe that dinner with Timothy really had been the end of it. They'd caught up, she'd put the past behind her, and life was moving on. I told myself I could trust her again. But then it happened again, 2 weeks later. The same call came through. She'd be working late on another special project. If it was true, it was a positive sign that her company valued her and was entrusting her with more responsibility. But the timing felt suspiciously convenient, and I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that it might just be an excuse. This time, I decided to keep things simple and called her direct office line. Since my number would show up on the caller ID, I figured she'd pick up if she was actually at her desk. It felt like a discreet way to confirm she was where she said she'd be, less intrusive than calling her cell, which she could answer from anywhere. Besides, with security cameras in the office, it seemed unlikely that anything inappropriate could happen there. I called her at 5:45 and again at 6:30. Both times, she picked up on the second ring with her usual cheerful voice. A quick, "I love you, I miss you, just wanted to hear your voice," was all I needed to settle my nerves. Feeling a tentative sense of peace, I started to believe that my suspicions might be unfounded. When she came home at her usual time the following Wednesday, another day Timothy was supposed to be in town, I let myself hope that whatever had happened before was truly behind us. 2 weeks later, Becky called to say she'd be working late again. This time, it was a Thursday instead of a Wednesday, which helped ease my concerns even further. From that point on, her late nights shifted to every other Thursday. I made it a habit to call her office line once each time, just to hear her voice and calm my lingering doubts. She always answered, cheerful and reassuring, and over time, my confidence in her grew a little more with each call. Things might have continued as they were if not for an office party hosted by Becky's insurance company about 4 months after this all began. It was a Friday evening event at a local Mexican restaurant in their banquet room. Her company held these gatherings twice a year, one in December for Christmas and another in June, which was the current occasion. While I recognized a few familiar faces from previous events, I didn't know anyone well, as I only attended these functions occasionally. As the evening progressed, I found myself chatting with various guests, spouses, significant others, and a few employees. The conversation that changed everything happened with an older woman named Sheila, who introduced herself as the office manager and the one responsible for assigning extra work. "So, you're the one making my married life a little harder," I joked, keeping my tone light. Sheila gave me a puzzled look. "I'm sorry, but I don't quite understand what you mean," she said. Still trying to keep things casual, I mentioned the special projects Becky had been assigned, which had required her to stay late at work a couple of times each month. Sheila's expression shifted, her brow furrowing slightly. "I'm a bit confused," she said, her tone more serious now. "I haven't assigned Becky any extra projects over the past few months. There have only been a couple, and those went to other team members. I know she's stayed late here and there, but that was usually to make up for the extended lunches she's been taking. For errands, as far as I know." Well, didn't I feel like a fool? I stammered some awkward excuse, trying to mask my embarrassment, but a heavy lump settled in my stomach. I had trusted Becky, taking her word at face value, just as trust in a marriage should be, but now it seemed that trust had backfired. I never once connected her late nights with her extended lunches. The shift to Thursdays suddenly felt explainable. Timothy might have adjusted his schedule. Maybe they noticed I'd been checking up on her and thought a change would throw me off, or perhaps it was just coincidence. Either way, the pieces were falling into place. All I needed now was proof. So, when the next every other Thursday arrived, I borrowed a friend's car and parked outside my wife's office building. Shortly after noon, I saw her emerge from the lobby, holding hands with a man who I assumed was Timothy. They walked together toward the parking lot, completely oblivious to the world around them. I took a few photos as they strolled away, surprised by how openly they acted. Her coworkers might not have known exactly what I looked like, but it seemed reckless to assume no one would recognize that the man wasn't me. They got into a Ford Taurus and merged into traffic, with me following closely behind. The traffic was heavy enough that I didn't have to worry about being noticed. They eventually pulled into the parking lot of a Super 8 motel, taking a route that bypassed the office. It seemed like he had planned this. I parked further down the lot, out of sight, and started taking pictures. He led the way, opening the motel room door, and they paused in the doorway as Becky kissed him deeply. My stomach churned, and I noticed she still had her rings on. I couldn't help but wonder if it excited him that she was wearing my rings while they were together. While I waited, I made a few calls, setting up a meeting with a lawyer and informing my office that I'd be taking a few days off. Mostly, though, I just sat there, waiting. Finally, around 2:30, the door opened. I took a few more pictures as Becky emerged, still adjusting her clothes and running her fingers through her disheveled hair. I didn't need any more evidence to know what had just taken place. I put my camera away and drove home. I felt a sense of relief that we hadn't started a family or bought a house. At least this separation would be straightforward in terms of assets. We only had our cars and savings, which would be easy to divide. The expected call came shortly after. I was told she'd be working late on another project. I simply told her that was fine, and that I'd see her at 7:30. I didn't bother calling her that evening, feeling there was no point, but she noticed right away, and when she asked, "Honey, I was expecting your call. You've always called me when you're working late to say you love me. What happened?" I had to come up with an excuse quickly. "I'm sorry, baby. I was in the garage working on something and lost track of time. By the time I realized, you were already on your way home. I promise I won't forget again, though I hope these late nights end soon." "Soon, I think," she replied. "If not, I'll ask them to assign the projects to someone else." I was determined that the next time would be the last. I had already made all the arrangements, including splitting the finances. Even though I knew what was coming, I didn't bother following her again. I already had everything I needed. So, when the call came that she was staying late again, I wasn't surprised. I grabbed dinner on the way home, but I barely tasted it. Then, I began packing my things. I had a couple of hours before Becky got home, and all I had were my clothes and toiletries. The rest of the apartment, decor, kitchen stuff, was all Becky's style. Cheap and generic. I didn't want any of it. I called her like before, trying to keep things normal for one last time. By the time Becky walked in at 7:25, I was fully packed and my things were already loaded in the car. She was in a good mood as she came through the door. "Hey, baby," she greeted, setting down her things. "How was your day?" She leaned in for a kiss, but I pulled back. "Becky, we need to talk." Okay, honey. Let me put these down." We sat at the kitchen table, a place where so many memories had been made over the years. She smiled, unaware of what was about to happen, as if we were about to have a casual conversation about buying that new sofa we'd been considering. But she had no idea how serious this was going to get. "So, you've been working late a lot recently. How are your projects going?" I asked. Great. They seem really impressed with the work I'm doing. Hopefully, it'll lead to good things down the road. Tell me about them." "What?" She hadn't expected me to ask for specifics. She thought she could get away with just saying projects, and that would be enough. But I wasn't buying it. "The projects," I repeated, leaning in. "Tell me about them. What have you been working on?" Just some analysis, of rates in certain areas and things like that. I'm glad it's going well for you. So, is there anything you'd like to tell me?" "Just that I love you. But you already knew that." I thought I did, until I found out about you and Timothy." She sighed, clearly frustrated. "That again, Ronald. Damn it, I haven't done anything with him. I haven't even seen him since that one time months ago." "Haven't seen him in months? Is that right? Are you sure about that?" "Yes, Ronald. I'm sure." But her face betrayed the certainty of her words. She was worried now. "Then maybe you can explain who this guy is," I said, sliding the pictures I had taken across the table, placing the one of her stumbling out of the hotel room on top. Her head dropped. And then, I pushed the divorce papers in front of her. "No, Ronald, please, it was nothing. Just nothing. Can't we work through this? Counseling, whatever you want," she pleaded. "Of course not, Becky. I told you from the start that cheating was a deal breaker, and I meant it. You're my wife, and in just the last few months, I haven't even been the last person you've been with. And you lied about it, right up until I shoved the pictures in your face. You've shown me nothing but disrespect for me and for our marriage. There's no fixing this. I thought we had something good, and I'm sorry that, apparently, I wasn't enough for you. Oh, Ronald, please don't think it was ever about you. I love you with all my heart, and it was never about you. I can't explain it. All those old feelings came rushing back when I saw him again, and I wanted to experience it one more time. The first night, it was just dinner, and I thought that would be the end of it. But then, he kept invading my thoughts. I was a virgin when we met, so I'd never been with the person I considered my first love. I got caught up in it, and when he came back 2 weeks later and asked me to lunch, I agreed. We ended up at a hotel. I did it willingly. I wish I could say I didn't, but I did. After that, it was easier every time, but it wasn't as exciting. I was thinking about ending it, but I guess I was too late. I'm sorry, Ronald. Please, I love you. Is there anything I can do to fix this? I'm sorry too, Becky. I really did love you. I walked out of the apartment for the last time. For months later, the divorce was final. At least she respected my decision and didn't fight it. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment, and as expected, Becky transferred to a different office and moved in with Timothy. I threw myself into my work, and by the time the divorce was finalized, I had earned a nice bonus and was on track for a promotion after our successful pitch to a large Japanese electronics company. Even though I knew I could never be with her again, I still missed her. She had always been the most beautiful woman in the world to me, and I couldn't help but wonder how anyone could ever compare. Almost a year later, I received a text from Becky. She was in town and wanted to meet for drinks. We arranged to meet at a small bar not far from my apartment that evening. When I walked in, I immediately noticed she had lost weight. She still looked beautiful, but in a different way. I greeted her warmly with a light hug and a peck on the cheek. "So, what brings you to town, Becky?" I asked as I sat across from her. I ordered a Coke, having never developed a taste for alcohol, but surprised her by adding a strawberry daiquiri to my order. She noticed. "Alcohol, Ronald? That's not like you," she remarked. "Things have changed a lot over the past year." "Life's full of surprises," I replied. "I suppose you're right. Actually, I'm thinking about moving back. I miss it here. Is Timothy able to work from this area?" I asked. It was a sincere question. I had moved past the anger and hurt. "We're not together anymore. He was cheating on me," she said. "Is that so?" I responded, surprised but not shocked. How ironic, I thought. It turns out I wasn't the only regular stop on his route, even back then, and he never stopped with any of them, even after I moved in with him, she continued. "I'm sorry to hear that. How did you find out?" "Well, it seems there were other husbands who were less understanding than you were. A couple of them got together to express their dissatisfaction with him and suggested that relocating might be wise. After he got out of the hospital, he disappeared. I have no idea where he went." She didn't seem particularly upset by it. "It couldn't have happened to a nicer guy." "So, are you trying to get your job back here?" "I'm looking into it, but everything's on hold while I try to make one specific arrangement," she said, flashing me that smile, the one I could never resist. But things had changed. "And what arrangement would that be, Becky?" I asked, already suspecting the answer. "Ronald, I'm really sorry for what I did. I was a fool who fell in love with a memory, a person who didn't exist anymore, and probably never did. We had a great marriage, and I still love you. I've learned my lesson. Is there any chance?" At that moment, a blur in a knee-length blue dress walked through the door, heading straight for my table, and more specifically, toward me. The tall blonde woman set her purse down on an empty chair and planted a quick kiss on my cheek. "Hey, baby. Sorry I'm late. My production meeting ran long. Is this my drink?" Without waiting for an answer, she grabbed the daiquiri and took a long sip through the straw. "I know. I got your text. Everything settled?" "Of course not. It never is. You know that. But I'm done talking about work and ready to enjoy the evening." I introduced them. "Renee, this is Becky, my ex-wife. Becky, this is my girlfriend, Renee. It's so nice to finally meet you," Renee said with genuine enthusiasm. "I was really excited when Ronald told me you were in town and we'd be meeting for drinks. I've heard a lot about you. Some of it good, I hope," Becky joked. "Almost all of it," Renee replied. "He speaks very highly of you." "Well, except for the last few months of your marriage, but I guess that's to be expected." I noticed Becky's eyes starting to well up. "He's a good guy," she said, her voice thick. "Hold on to him. Be smarter than I was." "I plan on it." "We've already set the date," Renee answered, flashing her engagement ring at Becky. I watched as Becky's gaze shifted, her eyes landing on Renee's ring, and she seemed to deflate slightly. "Congratulations. That's wonderful. I'm happy for you," Becky said quietly. Renee smiled sadly. "You were hoping to get him back, weren't you?" Becky sighed. "I was. I thought maybe, with the time that had passed, we could try again. I didn't know you were seeing anyone, Ronald, let alone engaged. I hoped maybe you'd take a chance on me, but I guess I'm out of chances. I should probably go." "I wish you wouldn't leave," Renee said gently, placing her hand on Becky's arm. "I've actually been looking forward to getting to know you a bit better." Becky looked confused. "Why? Why would you want to get to know your fiancé's ex-wife?" "Becky, you were a significant part of his life for a long time, and you meant a lot to him. You helped shape him into the man I fell in love with. Why wouldn't I want to get to know you? Maybe even be friends? That said, I'll never let you two be alone together. That's just common sense." Becky snorted. "Yeah, someone once told me it's not exactly a good idea for someone in a relationship to be alone with their ex. If only she had taken that advice when I first gave it to her." As time went on, things settled into a rhythm that felt right. I kept my focus on building my career and my relationship with Renee, and things only grew stronger between us. Renee's warmth, understanding, and the way she made me laugh helped me heal from the past. I never expected to find someone who could make me feel whole again, but she did. It wasn't long before we started planning our future together. I proposed on a weekend getaway to a quiet cabin by the lake. I had the ring in my pocket for days, but the moment felt perfect. She said yes with a joyful tear in her eye, and I knew then that I'd never make the same mistakes again. We made our home together, filled with love, laughter, and a new sense of peace. Becky eventually moved on with her life, as did I, but I no longer carried the weight of what had happened. Renee and I made sure to keep building our life on the solid foundation of trust and mutual respect. Every day was a fresh start, and for the first time in a long time, I truly felt like I had everything I needed. I realized that sometimes the greatest gifts in life come after the hardest lessons. And as I looked at Renee, laughing beside me, I knew I had found my real second chance. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
While scanning the restaurant for the client I was meant to meet, I spotted my ex-wife, Susan, accompanied by a slightly overweight middle-aged man. It was evident he had once been in good shape, but the effects of indulgence and time had altered his physique. Susan sat beside him, radiating contentment. Every aspect of the man hinted at wealth. Standing in the foyer, memories came flooding back to me. Despite 3 years having passed since our divorce, the emotions felt as raw as if it were yesterday. This is how I found myself here, observing from afar rather than being by her side. Nonetheless, as events unfolded, her desires were fulfilled. My troubles began with a trip to Albany for a client meeting. Opting to stay overnight to avoid a lengthy drive back, my plans were disrupted when, barely an hour into the journey, the client called to report a broken fender, though he was undamaged. Apologizing for the late cancellation, he expressed his regret, to which I assured him it was no inconvenience, suggesting we reschedule. Nevertheless, I felt unprepared for the extra 2 hours of driving ahead. Promising to do my best, I planned to return home for a surprise romantic dinner with my beloved wife. 90 minutes later, I finally turned onto my street. The first thing that caught my eye was the presence of 3 unfamiliar cars parked in the driveway. Knowing my wife often invited her friends over when I was away, I didn't think much of it. I parked on the street and entered the house, assuming everything was normal. However, the sight of 4 sets of clothes strewn across the living room floor immediately signaled that something was amiss. As I stood there, a gut-wrenching realization hit me. My wife's passionate cry wasn't a call for help. It was a familiar plea for more intense lovemaking. My heart sank as I grasped the truth. My wife was engaged in a carnal encounter with someone else. Despite my reluctance, I knew I had to face the reality awaiting me upstairs. Upon reaching the top of the stairs, I was met with the sound of my wife emitting a primal scream. Stealthily peering around the bedroom doorframe, I beheld 3 men. While unfamiliar with 2 of them, the third was unmistakably her boss from work, Jeff Davis. To my shock, they had my wife engaged in carnal acts. My disdain for Jeff deepened as he showered her with praise, acknowledging her assistance with his business clients. It sickened me to realize that this idiot was exploiting my wife for his professional gain. All 3 of them treated her as a mere object of pleasure, using derogatory language and exerting their dominance over her. Witnessing her behavior so alien to the woman I knew during our 10 years of marriage, I couldn't help but agree with Jeff's choice of derogatory label for her. Quietly retreating, I slipped downstairs unnoticed, seeking refuge in my office. Retrieving my digital video camera, I found it still had some battery life. With an old holiday cassette inside and space for recording, I aimed to document my wife's actions for legal purposes rather than creating some illicit spectacle. Setting up the camera at the bedroom door, I captured footage of my wife's face and the others involved, managing to endure only 510 minutes of the ordeal before my emotions overwhelmed me. While some might find such a scene arousing, for me, it brought only sadness and a profound sense of betrayal. Feeling utterly deflated, I sought solace downstairs to collect my thoughts. In my office, I retrieved my weapon from the safe, removing the safety as a precaution. Though not inclined toward violence, I couldn't shake the urge to assert myself if things escalated. Venturing into the living room, I confiscated the car keys and wallets from the discarded pants strewn across the floor, deflating the tires of all vehicles parked outside, including Sue's car. Returning indoors, a sinister grin crossed my face as I concocted a plan, confident it would succeed if Sue took her cell phone. Spotting it on the bedside table during my recording, I readied my camera, positioned myself discreetly behind the stairs, and dialed her number. After several unanswered attempts, she finally picked up, the silence in the house indicating she had warned the others to remain quiet. Sue, breathless, inquired, "Hey, Bobby, how's Albany?" The faint chuckles of the men in the room were audible. "You seem winded, are you okay?" I pretended concern in my voice. "Yes, had to hurry upstairs for my phone call," she replied swiftly, composing herself. "My client canceled, so I'll be home shortly. Interested in dinner?" I asked calmly, though internally I felt more agitated than ever. "Heading home now?" she asked anxiously. "Sounds good. Just need to get ready, babe. See you," she hurriedly replied before ending the call abruptly, leaving me with a knowing smile, aware of what was about to unfold in just a minute. As anticipated, 4 completely undressed individuals began descending the stairs into the living room. The men swiftly dressed, and Sue also hurriedly tidied herself. As they all rushed out, Sue slipped on shoes and a jacket, glancing outside, hoping they'd depart before she did. Had she been less excited, she might have noticed my car parked on the street. The men all started shouting at her simultaneously, prompting Sue to step onto the porch to listen. At that precise moment, I slammed the front door shut and locked it behind her. My wife caught a glimpse of my face as I closed the door, attempting to communicate through the side window with a pleading tone in her voice. The time for discussion was over. The other men returned to my porch, banging on the front door, indicating they wanted their belongings. Realizing their intentions, I dialed emergency, reporting an attempted break-in. The dispatcher informed me a neighbor had already called. Providing my name and address, I awaited police assistance, which arrived promptly just 2 minutes later. After the police interrogated my wife, I approached the 2 officers at the scene and informed them that my wife had been maltreated by the men present, demanding their arrest. This caused immediate reactions from the men, who began shouting that they were invited, and she consented, denying any maltreatment allegations. Everyone, including myself, turned to Sue, waiting for her response. She avoided eye contact and admitted in a subdued voice filled with shame that she had invited the men into the house, engaged in closeness activity with them, and wasn't maltreated. She acted of her own volition. The men seemed relieved to avoid maltreatment charges. Shortly after, 2 more police cars arrived, and they recorded everyone's names for their report. The senior officer then addressed me, suggesting that since my wife invited these men and they were all over 18 years old, there was little legal recourse. He recommended counseling or similar assistance, delivering the remark with disdainful glare towards my wife. I instructed the police to call a taxi and informed them that Mrs. Thomas would not be allowed back into the house. That evening, one of the men called a taxi after discovering their flat tires. They also attempted to accuse me of stealing their belongings, but I refuted their claims to the police. Turning, I walked back to the porch, where Sue remained with them until the taxi arrived. I stood on the porch, my eyes flashing with anger. Despite my fury, my wife bravely approached me. Unaware of my rage and the firearm on my person, she may have fled had she known. "Bobby, I'm deeply sorry," she attempted to speak, but I swiftly interrupted. "You've shattered my heart, and I'll never forgive you. Jeff called you a strumpet, and honestly, I think it's fitting. Henceforth, I'll refer to you as such and won't use your real name again. If you ever need to communicate with me, do so through Tad." With those final words, I retreated into the house, locking the door behind me, leaving her standing there. She hurried back to the group in tears, and Jeff moved to console her. She rebuffed his embrace, which oddly brought me some solace. However, my fleeting satisfaction soon waned. Upon returning to my bedroom, the scent of lovemaking pervaded the air, further incensing me. I erupted in fury, ransacking the entire room. Hauling the mattress, I hurled it onto the front lawn. Retrieving my toolbox from the garage, I disassembled the bed, tossing its pieces outside along with the mattress. Returning to the bedroom, I seized Sue's cell phone from the floor, scrolling through her contacts and messages. Predictably, I discovered repugnant emails, photos, and even videos of unfamiliar men engaging in carnal acts with her. Examining the images, it was evident she was acquainted with them. I chuckled bitterly at my former attentiveness to her, realizing those days were long gone. I carted all the boxes from our bedroom downstairs, depositing their contents in separate piles on the front lawn. Proceeding to purge her belongings from the guest room, I encountered an unexpected revelation. Moving each dresser drawer outside as I had done with the bedroom items, I encountered resistance with the last bottom drawer. Fueled by anger, I forcefully yanked it, hearing a telltale crack. With a bit of force, the drawer finally opened, revealing the source of the obstruction. 7 or 8 DVDs hidden beneath. I accidentally cracked one of the plastic cases, but fortunately, the drive remained intact. My heart sank once more as I examined the discs. I didn't think I could feel any worse, yet I did. Descending the stairs, I scrutinized the titles on the discs, which only intensified my distress. Arriving in the living room, I arranged everything on shelves for closer inspection. The first disc depicted Sue with her close friend Sarah at Sarah's residence. Sue often assisted at Sarah's gatherings in Avon, typically held on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It seemed they engaged in closeness activities with various individuals at her house. As I watched the footage over several hours, tears welled up, halting only at the sight of the final 2 discs. The first showcased Sue with her tennis instructor, a service I funded. She attended lessons every Saturday, returning too fatigued for closeness later in the evening, which now became clear. The second disc revealed Sue engaging in closeness encounters at her workplace, specifically in the boardroom with Jeff, her boss, and Jeff's superior, Bill Evans. Bill held considerable influence in the community, often featured in newspaper articles for his philanthropic efforts, which, I now witnessed, extended to my wife's private affairs. Retrieving a large envelope, I carefully placed inside it a cell phone, the discs, and a cassette tape I had recorded earlier. My intention was to hand the entire envelope over to my lawyer and confidant, Ted Worth, my trusted friend of many years. He was one of only 2 individuals in whom I truly confided. Nothing else mattered at that moment. Glancing at Sue's computer on the desk, I powered it up and began duplicating every file, email, photo, and video onto external drives. It took approximately an hour to complete the process, after which I settled down to sift through my wife's digital archives. Among the videos were scenes reminiscent of those found on the CDs I had discovered. Additionally, I stumbled upon explicit images typically associated with adult websites. Delving further, I uncovered a trove of emails spanning about 6 months. Despite her attempts to conceal them under misleading file names, I unearthed correspondence between her, Jeff, and several other men, as well as exchanges with Sarah. Just last week, I had dismissed them until one nearly devastated me. The thought of using my weapon crossed my mind, but I realized she wasn't worth it. I had to remain strong. The only email that affected me this deeply was from Sue to Sarah. Sarah questioned why she hadn't left me to be single again and asked Sue to detail her ideal future husband. Here's how she responded. Sarah, I have no interest in him anymore. Bobby is faithful but foolish. I fear he'll soon uncover my secret lifestyle. He's not entirely clueless, but love blinds him. Lately, he's been gaining weight, and his expanding belly is off-putting. Comparing him to other men, he's lacking. I also detest beards and mustaches, which make him appear somewhat repulsive. I once loved him deeply, but the excitement of recent years is too enticing to give up. His lawyer best friend could pose problems if he gets involved. Jeff and Bill at work hint at promotions and perks, with suggestive undertones. I laugh. I also desire a house and a car. If I play my cards right, I could also secure alimony each month. Additionally, I'm anticipating our Tuesday party, pending recovery from my tennis injury. Tony is impressive. Ensure I receive last Thursday's video. It was my first time with so many men simultaneously. As for my dream man, he must be affluent, loyal, compliant, and not too bright. He must cater to my every whim and still ask which one. I chuckle. I'm indifferent about the bedroom as long as there's money involved. I laugh. I can fulfill my needs elsewhere. Sometimes it feels too easy. Damn, Bobby's home now. Gotta go. See you on Tuesday. Call me Sue. I read this letter repeatedly, its words disgusting, and the last few years deeply hurting me. Did she truly feel this way about me? Was my love so blind that she cheated on me for over 2 years? Afterward, I retired to bed and fell asleep on the sofa. The next morning, plagued by restless sleep, I called in sick to work. I reached out to my close friend and lawyer, Ted Worth. Mary, Ted's secretary, answered the phone. I'd known her almost as long as Ted. I urgently requested a meeting, but she informed me he'd be tied up in court all day. Mary informed Ted that I need to meet him in his office in an hour. If he starts bothering you with nonsense, bring up Tammy Brown's name. That'll grab his attention. See you in an hour, I said before ending the call promptly. I began getting dressed when my phone rang. Reluctant to speak with Sue, I checked the caller ID. It was an unknown number, so I answered, suspecting it might be Ted returning my call. Hello, Mr. Thomas. This is Bill Evans from Susan's office. If possible, I'd like to discuss the events from last evening at your house. Could we meet today in my office to clarify the situation for all involved? Unsure if he was aware of the video footage of him with my wife at his workplace, I knew he was concerned about retaining Jeff Davis's key clients. My wife and Jeff were valuable assets to him, and he likely didn't want to lose them. Additionally, he was surely worried about negative publicity for his company and himself personally. Mr. Evans, I have an important meeting this morning, but I'll call you back on this number before noon to arrange something for today, I assured him calmly. I conveyed it as though he was reasoning with me. He was in for a surprise. As I stepped out, I glimpsed what resembled a bizarre yard sale. The broken bed and Sue's clothes were still strewn about. An elderly neighbor waved, wearing a curious expression. I knew I'd become the talk of the neighborhood. As they say in the news, it was a suburb sensation. In the city center, I grabbed a bite to eat before heading straight to Ted's office. Mary brewed a cup of coffee for me. Lots of cream, no sugar. We had a long history together. Holy crap, Bobby. I don't know what you've got on Tad, but I mentioned his name and he instructed me to clear his schedule for today. I could use a month off, she quipped. If you want to know who Tammy Brown is, she added jokingly, you'll have to ask Ted. By the way, where is he? I inquired. He said he'd be here right away. He needed to reschedule his meeting with the judge for today's court hearing, she informed me. Just then he walked in. Holy crap, Bobby. Tammy Brown. You must be in big trouble for mentioning that name to me. Come into the office and let's talk. Mary, don't patch me through to anyone right now, Tad quickly interjected. I grabbed my coffee and he shut the door for privacy. I recounted the events of the previous evening and shared what I had discovered about Sue's new lifestyle. Then, I handed him an envelope with the evidence I had gathered, and finally, he spoke. He listened attentively to my story without interruption. I could see the legal gears turning in his head as he processed the events from the night before. I also informed him about Bill Evans's request for a meeting today. Well, Bobby, as they say, let's prioritize. I've known you for a long time, and I understand you're devastated. Is there any chance for reconciliation with Sue? He inquired. Ted, if it were Katie, your wife, and you found those videos and emails, you'd leave her in an instant. I want a divorce, but I also want to inflict some serious damage. I'm not going to quietly accept this betrayal, I confessed. Okay, first, we'll sue Tony and the tennis club. Sarah is off the table as she's just a friend. Sue's workplace, however, is a different story. Secondly, we'll sue the two clients and their companies who were at your house. We'll also go after Jeff Davis, Bill Evans, and their associates. He warned that things might get worse before they get better, Ted cautioned me. But I don't care. Even if I have to resort to physical confrontation, I'm going to make these people pay for what they've done through Sue, I asserted with anger in my voice. All right, Bobby, recap what Bill Evans wanted, and we'll proceed from there. Ted informed me that we explored several options, and I favored the final one. A direct attack on Sue's workplace seemed most fitting. I had leverage with video evidence of Davis, Evans, and Sue in their boardroom, Ted explained, noting that as Sue's superiors, they influenced her position. It could also result in serious legal repercussions. I liked the sound of it. Ted also hinted that once Bill Evans realized what evidence we had, his stance would change, likely resulting in a settlement offer. If it's less than $2 million, he can forget it, I remarked firmly. I'll tell you what, Ted, make it $2.5 million. I've seen your legal bills before, I joked. Come over tonight at 7 p.m. Katie will whip up a fantastic dinner for us. You could use a break from home, I insisted. I promptly scheduled an appointment with Bill Evans for 2 p.m. Following this, Mary peeked into the office. Ted, they're calling you online. 1, she informed him. Mary, I told you no calls, he snapped, visibly agitated. Sorry, Ted, but this is Susan. She wants to talk to you, and I thought you might want to answer, Mary persisted. Sorry, Mary, it's going to be a long day, and it's just getting started. Does she know Bobby is here? He inquired. Not that I know, Ted, she replied. Tell her I'll talk to her in a minute, he said more calmly as Mary promptly exited to the reception area. Well, I bet she's already discovered that her cell phone, computer, and all her DVDs are missing. I bet she was furious that I dumped all her belongings on the front lawn along with our bed, I informed him. Wow, you really had a busy evening. Let me handle this conversation and please refrain from intervening. As your lawyer, I need to clarify a few things right now, he indicated to me, connecting the call. I started to overhear a one-sided conversation, but I could almost discern what she was saying to Tad without hearing her words. "Hi, Susan, this is Ted. Yes, I already spoke to him. Bobby is a stand-up guy and my friend. I thought you, of all people, would have his back instead of betraying him." "No excuses, Sue. I'm not in the mood. Yes, I'll represent him. He has strong arguments. You know this won't be pleasant, right? I'll talk to him. But you've shattered a man who was always faithful and deeply loved you. I doubt he cares about your opinion. My advice is to get yourself a good lawyer. You'll need one. Yes, Bill Evans scheduled an appointment for 2 p.m., though I don't think you should attend. Listen to me, Sue. If you even attempt to eavesdrop outside the office door, I'll advise Bobby to leave, and things will escalate." "It's better to wait and keep yourself composed today. I know he put your belongings out on the lawn, but just as you can invite strangers into your bedroom, he can remove your possessions from the house. Frankly, I'm surprised he didn't resort to violence last night. Yes, he was armed, but for self-defense purposes. Remember, he believed you were in danger of assault. It's in the police report. I can't say for certain, but if it were my Katie, I'd likely be in custody right now. I think he acted out of anger given the circumstances. Regarding your computer, cell phone, and any other missing items, you'll need to speak to the co-owner of the house. Perhaps he left them on the lawn along with your clothes, and someone took them. I've handled all the escrow paperwork for the house, and you both have equal rights. How you exercise these rights is up to each of you." Ted responded that he would inform him immediately and advised Sue sternly to remain where she was and let Bobby stay in the house until things were resolved, as it wasn't safe for her to be there with him at the moment. He then told Sue not to push it and expressed his temptation to punch her in the nose. He instructed her to stay with Sarah and promised to be in touch, asking her lawyer to contact him once they've retained one. Tears wouldn't sway Ted now, as he was not only Bobby's legal counsel, but also his friend. He stated that her tears wouldn't move him, and that he could be ruthless when necessary, which seemed to be one of those times. He expressed regret that she would witness a side of him only his enemies see, and warned her that she wouldn't like it. Ted concluded by instructing Sue to keep her distance from Bobby and remain in her office for the time being, as he wanted nothing to do with her. Glancing up at me, Ted asked if I caught most of that conversation, his tone tinged with sadness. I confessed to my friend that I did catch most of it, expressing my wish to confront her face to face and express my true feelings. However, I admitted that I didn't think I could bear the pain of seeing her again, at least not yet. "I have a couple of requests for you, Bobby," he said, his demeanor shifting instantly to one of positivity and optimism. "First, hand me those tapes." Tad indicated for me to retrieve the videotapes from the envelope, those from the previous night, the ones featuring Tony at the tennis club, and the footage of Sue with Mr. Davis and Mr. Evans in her office. After handing him the tapes, he instructed me to invite Mary to join me for lunch. I gave him a puzzled look, to which he promptly responded in kind. "I think it's best if I review them myself to spare you any further distress before our meeting at 2 p.m. Moreover, I don't believe watching this material would benefit you right now. I don't want you to be upset before our meeting with Bill Evans." I acknowledged his wisdom and thanked him before sharing the good news with Mary. She jokingly suggested I take her to an upscale restaurant if Ted was footing the bill. We both chuckled and left the premises. Mary proved to be an excellent dining companion, and for the next hour, she helped me forget my troubles. Upon our return, we heard Ted cheering as we entered the office. He was in high spirits, doing a little victory dance at his desk. "These recordings are a game changer, Bobby. I can't believe it," he exclaimed. My expression turned bittersweet, and I think he finally grasped why. "Oh, Bobby, I'm truly sorry I didn't acknowledge the significance of these videos. I know Sue's actions have deeply hurt you. I was just excited about what I uncovered." He apologized sincerely. "Bobby, come over here. I need your eyes on something." Ted beckoned me, and I complied, positioning myself behind him to view his screen. "Did you watch the entire video Tony shot at the tennis club with Sue?" he inquired. "No, I only managed to skim through some of it last night. It was tough to stomach without feeling the urge to lash out or worse," I admitted honestly. "Well, brace yourself. Towards the end, just after Tony and Sue finish, they attract a small crowd in the men's locker room. Yes, the tennis club's locker room. I hate to say it, but she let the other men who were watching join in after Tony. I'm not telling you this to upset you, but to shed light on this guy right here," Ted explained, pointing at the screen on his desk. The individual he was indicating was an older man DML treatmented in a towel. With his long gray hair and a walrus-like mustache, he asked if I recognized him. Ted hit play on the video, and I saw him discard the towel, revealing a substantial package any man would boast about. The issue was, he went straight to my wife and engaged in coition with her. The next moment, she was surrounded by 5 more men eagerly awaiting their turn, I recounted. Ted, I have no clue who this guy is, but I presume you do, I responded, trying to maintain composure. Bobby, this is ammunition for our meeting today at the tennis club at 16 Nasi, he informed me, his excitement palpable as he explained his strategy. I grinned when I heard his plan. Besides being my friend, Ted was an exceptional lawyer. I was relieved to have him on my side this time. We departed his office for downtown, armed with a portable DVD player, some printed photographs, and legal envelopes. Upon arrival at Sue's building, we proceeded to Bill Evans's office on the top floor, with Sue's office located 1 floor below. After waiting in the reception area, we were eventually ushered into Mr. Evans's lavishly furnished office. Just before entering, I sensed someone observing me from the hallway. I glanced in that direction and caught a glimpse of the woman before she vanished around the corner. Guess who? I thought to myself, relieved I wouldn't have to confront her today. We stepped into Bill's office, adorned with opulent furniture and adorned with plaques, awards, and photos of him with various notable figures. The thought crossed my mind. Had he ever brought Sue here? At that moment, my disdain for Mr. Evans intensified more than ever. I introduced Ted and took the lead in the conversation. Hello, Mr. Evans. This is my friend Ted Worth, and he'll be joining us for the meeting you scheduled today, I informed Bill as we exchanged handshakes. Mr. Thomas, Bob, I thought this was meant to be a private meeting between you and me, Mr. Evans inquired. Well, I decided to bring Ted along. Anything you have to say to me, you can say to him as well, I stated firmly, without opening it up for discussion. He accepted Ted's presence and directed his remarks solely at me, disregarding Ted. This brought a smile to Ted's face. I anticipated what was coming next, but allowed Mr. Evans to speak first before we burst his bubble. Bob, may I call you Bob? Bill asked. Absolutely no issues. In fact, I thought it might be beneficial to have Jeff Davis present at this meeting too. I'm not sure if it's feasible, but it concerns him as well, I informed Mr. Evans. After a brief pause, he pressed the intercom button. Julie, inform Jeff that I require his presence in my office immediately. Tell him to drop everything and come here right away. Understood. Jeff will be here shortly. In the meantime, I want to express my sincere apologies for the trouble caused by Jeff and Sue in your life. I know last night must have been awful, but if we collaborate, we might be able to find a solution beneficial to all parties, Bill expressed optimistically. What exactly do you mean, Mr. Evans? I inquired, waiting for Jeff's arrival. I genuinely care for your wife, Sue, Bill began, but was interrupted by Jeff's entrance. He hesitated momentarily, appearing as though he might turn and leave, but Bill instructed him to take a seat. Reluctantly, Jeff complied, avoiding eye contact with me. Bob, I wanted to convey that I have great affection for Sue. Almost like a daughter, he started to speak when Ted interjected. Are you implying you have a penchant for incest, Mr. Evans? Ted asked, catching him off guard. I chuckled to myself, understanding the intent behind Ted's remark. What? What are you suggesting? Do I have a fondness for incest? What on earth does that mean? He retorted with indignation. Well, allow me to illustrate. As they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words, Ted stated, placing the DVD player on Bill's desk. These are screenshots from the video you're about to watch. He handed them to Jeff, not Bill. Jeff's eyes widened, and he passed them slowly to Bill. The images depicted Bill and Jeff both involved with my wife, leaving no room for doubt about their identities or actions. I even suspected Bill recognized his own boardroom table where he and Sue had engaged in their activities. Jeff, are you seriously telling me that you were foolish enough to record this on video and distribute copies? Bill queried, nearly speechless. It was evident that Jeff was currently unable to provide a response and appeared completely dumbfounded. Well, Mr. Evans, here's how it's going to unfold. Oh, and just to clarify, I'm Bobby's attorney as well as his friend. So let me outline what we expect and how we expect you to address it, Tad informed the shocked audience, thoroughly relishing the moment. Firstly, Sue retains her position without question. Bobby believes she'll require employment, and she seems to fit in quite well with everyone here. He directed this statement to Bill, accompanied by a subtle wink. Secondly, Mr. Davis is no longer part of the equation here. Sue stays, and he exits, Tad declared to Bill, gesturing towards the flabbergasted Jeff. Thirdly, we expect you to present us with a monetary offer that respects our intelligence. We'll entertain your initial proposal and provide a yes or no response within 5 business days. We anticipate taking legal action within 2 months, possibly sooner if necessary. Before they could interject, Tad initiated the video playback, swiveling the screen for Bill's viewing. It depicted both men engaging in carnal acts with my wife repetitively in their boardroom. Jeff didn't need to watch, given his involvement in the video recording. Bill simply observed with his mouth agape. I could sense his mind working overtime, contemplating how to salvage his business, reputation, family life, and, most importantly, finances. I knew action would be imminent. Jeff, after these gentlemen depart today, we'll need to have a serious discussion about your future employment here. I'll consult with my legal counsel to negotiate a settlement that satisfies you to some extent. You both comprehend the potential repercussions for our business if this information were to surface prematurely, Bill mused aloud. Don't fret, Mr. Evans. We'll maintain your confidentiality until we receive a serious proposal from you. However, I wouldn't rush to terminate Mr. Davis's employment just yet. He may possess additional copies of the video, providing him with leverage. If we fail to act, you and Mr. Davis can address this matter independently. Oh, and just so you're aware, both of you could face legal consequences for engaging in relations with an employee, directly impacting your employment status and prospects, Tad cautioned them. As we both rose to depart, Tad reclaimed the DVD player and the photographs we had brought along. We exited just as Bill and Jeff seemed poised for a private discussion. I approached Tad with a query, but he gestured for silence until we were outside. I hadn't noticed my wife lurking around the corner, attempting to eavesdrop on our conversation, but Tad had. The last thing I heard was Mr. Evans barking into Julie's intercom. "Get Sue Thomas here immediately." I grinned, anticipating an intriguing encounter. Bill would soon discover that I had discovered his DVD in our home. Once outside, I inquired why he had given Jeff an escape route by suggesting he use his own videotape against Bill. "Divide and conquer, as they say," Ted explained. "It's better if they don't act as a united front, but rather each for themselves. That way, if Bill makes a half-hearted offer to us, we can play them against each other." Tad also noted wisely that Jeff and Bill have families and attend church, despite their behavior depicted in the videotapes. They're not keen on rocking the familial boat at present. As I departed the building, I realized it would now be remembered as the site where my wife betrayed me, rather than the esteemed workplace she once inhabited. It saddened me to think about. Ted's words snapped me back to reality. "All right, let's grab a beer before our next rendezvous at the tennis club at 4 p.m. We could both use a drink right now, and there's something I need to discuss with you, though I'm not quite sure how yet," Ted mentioned as we drove across town toward the tennis club. We stopped at a quaint bar restaurant adjacent to the tennis club. Ted ordered 2 beers and began speaking to me. "Bobby, I believe Bill Evans will extend an offer, but likely for just under $1 million. I'm familiar with his legal team from another case, and they're quite adept. He's also a realist. I'll call him tomorrow and convey that a lowball offer won't bode well for his client's business or personal life. I'll propose around $3 million or suggest we abandon negotiations altogether," he disclosed. "Furthermore, I need to ascertain if, in the event the offer is rejected, I have your authorization to cast Susan in an unfavorable light. I won't hold back for anything. My duty as your legal representative is to pursue what ensures victory in court, even if it entails painting an unflattering portrait of her. It might get ugly and highly publicized. I'll utilize every legal means at my disposal to secure our case. You might not appreciate all the potentially damning revelations about Sue, your marriage, and even your carnal life that could surface. I'm not sure if you've considered this aspect," Ted added at the 11th hour. I expressed that I had given serious consideration to the matter and believed I possessed more integrity than they gave me credit for. I mentioned that if necessary, I was willing to proceed, but I preferred to explore the financial offer route first, which I hinted at to Ted. Ted agreed and suggested starting by evaluating what Bill had to offer. He assured me that if Bill's offer was unsatisfactory, he would handle all the necessary paperwork promptly. Additionally, he mentioned leveraging his newspaper contacts and friends at 3 local news stations. He said they would be willing to obtain footage or images, even if they needed to censor the explicit content with blue bars, as they say in sitcoms. "Ted, you've consistently been there for me, and I trust your judgment. I just wish this whole mess never happened. Being an oblivious husband was more enjoyable than being publicly humiliated by a cheating wife. Nevertheless, you have my authorization to take whatever actions are necessary. After all, I didn't initiate this debacle, but I'm determined to conclude it soon," I expressed with frustration in my voice. "Understood, Bobby. No problem. Now, let's discuss the material for our next meeting. This guy, Mr. Harry Rydell, is the owner of the Ace Tennis Club. This is the guy I pointed out in the video in my office. He's indicated that he'll likely adopt a laissez-faire attitude, asserting that adults will be adults and he won't intervene. Even Tony's tennis coach might be dismissed for appearance's sake, only to be rehired later. Tony's quite popular at the club, particularly among female members. Keep in mind, Bobby, that while men primarily pay club dues, women are also stakeholders. This dynamic will be pivotal in your interaction with Mr. Rydell. He briefed me on the situation. We arrived just in time, and it was evident that Mr. Rydell and Thad didn't see eye to eye. Their animosity was palpable from the outset, Mr. Rydell told Thad bluntly, signaling the meeting's conclusion. "Mr. Rydell, this is Bob Thomas," he said, nodding in my direction, "and his wife is a member of your club. It has come to our attention that Tony Simba, your tennis instructor, was having an affair with Mr. Thomas's wife. We want to know what you plan to do about this," Tad finished. He waited for Rydell to speak, but even I knew that he would take everything upon himself, and in a few words, send Thad to hell. "Listen, what two consenting adults do behind closed doors in their own time is none of my business," Harry Rydell informed us. "And as for you, Mr. Thomas, if you can't satisfy your wife in the bedroom, don't come crying to me and blaming me if she strays. There are plenty of unhappy spouses who frequent the Ace Tennis Club. Some keep returning for the personalized attention my staff provides them, if you catch my drift," Harry said, winking at me. I felt the urge to lash out at him, but Ted restrained my wrist and quietly advised me to stay composed and follow his lead. "You see, Harry, you're assuming this occurred outside the club without the owner's knowledge and consent. It's presumptuous of you to make such assumptions," Ted confronted him, pulling out a DVD player and placing it on his desk. Ted pressed play, directing the screen towards Harry. It was evident from his reaction that he didn't like what he saw in the video footage. Before Harry could respond, Thad interjected, "Harry, you, with full awareness and with your colleague's complicity, took advantage of a paying member of your club. Mrs. Susan Thomas, a married woman whose dues were paid by Mr. Thomas, is now a dissatisfied customer," Thad informed the silent Mr. Rydell. "When this information surfaces, every dues-paying man will want to know if his wife is engaging in similar activities while he foots the bill. I'll have to subpoena everyone present in the locker room that day. Married men may not be pleased with you about this," Ted added, adopting an almost storytelling tone. "Furthermore, there's the issue of reasonable expectation of privacy when filming in the locker room. Harry, once I'm through with you, your club won't retain its community reputation, and your bank account may suffer as well," Ted asserted for added persuasion. "So here's what we're after. A substantial offer from you and prompt action. Doing so could spare you considerable inconvenience and financial loss," Ted concluded, as we observed Harry Rydell weighing his options. "Ted, you're still a real piece of work, but I can't argue with your reasoning. I'll contact you tomorrow with my offer. If I comply, all tapes will be returned to me and remain confidential. I'll also willingly terminate Tony's employment. Now, if that's all you legal extortionists came for, get the hell out." Harry Rydell dismissed us, as Ted retrieved the DVD player with a grin and powered it off. "Oh, and say hi to Tito Martinez," Ted remarked to Harry before exiting the room. "Go to hell, Worth," was all Harry could retort. Ted chuckled all the way back to the parking lot. "That was quite the adventure. Now we wait for suggestions," Tad informed me as we headed to his house for a delightful homemade dinner. By week's end, Bill Evans had offered nearly $2.7 million to retain Sue as his employee. Jeff Davis, after naively handing over all his tapes to Bill Evans, found himself out of a job. Bill simply terminated him, leaving poor Jeff with little recourse. I went after the two fools who were with my wife the night I caught her with Jeff. They happened to be two of Jeff's major clients. Neither of them wanted any publicity, whether for their companies or themselves. So each of them offered me $1 million to keep quiet. Harry Rydell refused to make any offer and suggested we take legal action. So we did, and he ended up losing $3 million by the time we were done with him. His club suffered a mass exodus of members, and he was compelled to relinquish ownership. He likely thought he could evade consequences, but the judge wasn't impressed with the footage from the private locker rooms, nor with the infidelity. I granted Sue a house and a car as she desired, without having to pay a cent in child support. I only encountered her twice in court. Both times I greeted her as a strumpet, which brought her to tears. I often pondered why she cried now, but not before causing such turmoil in my life. I came into more money than I ever imagined thanks to following Ted's advice. The pain still lingered, haunting me to this day. All the trials of that dreadful year rushed back in an instant. I hadn't realized anyone was addressing me until I snapped out of my flashback and heard the restaurant manager inquiring if everything was all right. Unsure how long I had stood there lost in thought, I shook my head to clear it and returned to the present. Apologies, just reminiscing about an old issue once I saw the group I came to meet. Thanks again, I explained to the manager, noticing the curious glance he gave, reminiscent of how people regard an elderly person lost in reverie. I made a beeline for my ex-wife's table. The surprise was evident on her face. When last we were together, I was overweight, with long hair and a beard, nursing an old knee injury from baseball. That was my excuse then, but truthfully, I had settled into a complacent life with her. Now I sported a shorter haircut, was trim from regular workouts, and had my knee repaired thanks to the money from Jeff and Bill's company. My suits were now upscale, and I made an effort to present well in public. I opted to speak up first. "You look fantastic today, Strumpet. Almost forgot how stunning you could be," I remarked, intentionally provoking a reaction. I knew exactly how to push her buttons. "My name is Susan, Bobby. Why can't you address me by my name?" she retorted, clearly irritated. "I didn't label you Strumpet. You know who did? I simply find it fitting. I warned you 3 years ago that you shattered my heart, and I'll always remember you by that title," I explained, as the man beside her began to object and rise from his seat. But Sue urged him to remain calm. Tears welled up, smudging her makeup. Her boyfriend interjected, "Go freshen up, Sue, and fix your face. I'll handle this idiot for you." With those words, she stood, locking eyes with me as I reciprocated with a single glance, perhaps revealing the agony I'd harbored for 3 years. Her tears flowed harder, surprising me that she still harbored any sentiment toward me. Or perhaps it was lingering guilt, likely a blend of both. "I expect you to be gone when I return," she declared tearfully, heading to the restroom, where I noticed the sizable engagement ring on her finger as she wiped her eyes and left. "You must be Bob Thomas, Sue's ex-husband?" he queried with disdain in his tone. "Indeed, and you must be the new man she's been dreaming of," I retorted, sensing his indignation. "I'm Sue's CFO, and if I were you, I'd refrain from using that term," he cautioned, though his reluctance to cause a scene was evident. "I only sought to converse with you privately. I have 3 inquiries, then I'll vanish from your life forever," I informed him, noting his quizzical expression. "I've been in your shoes before, and I don't want anyone else to endure my fate. I suppose the Strumpet painted me as a lousy husband, abusive or neglectful, or a womanizer," I remarked, knowing precisely what she'd conveyed to him. "But I'm not here to salvage my reputation in your eyes. Honestly, I doubt it'd serve any purpose. First off, does Sarah still host her Avon gatherings at her place on Tuesdays and Thursdays?" I inquired. "Sue assists Sarah with her decor sales on Mondays and Wednesdays. It seems your memory's a bit faulty," he snapped back. "All right then. Does she still take tennis lessons on Saturdays?" I pressed. "Sue swings a racket on Sundays. You seem to have a hazy recollection for someone married to her for so long," he remarked triumphantly. "All right, final question. Have you ever checked under the bottom drawer of the dresser in your living room?" I asked hurriedly. "No, why would I even do that?" he protested. "The 3 questions I posed to you are the reasons why we're no longer together. I still have all the leftover divorce paperwork in my office. Legal documents, emails from Sarah and the other woman, and hours of videotapes. I've carried these with me for the past 3 years, so I thought you should have them," I explained, retrieving a worn and folded piece of paper from my wallet. "This is what the other woman wrote to Sarah when she inquired about how to get rid of me before I discovered her infidelity. After reading that letter, I realized I didn't know her at all and probably still don't. But it all revolves around you," I stated, handing him the paper. However, I knew Sue very well and understood her compulsive habits. She always followed the same routine meticulously, sometimes driving me crazy. I also had a feeling that even with a new man, she'd stick to her old ways, I elaborated. He seemed hesitant to accept the paper, but curiosity seemed to win out. He reached over and opened the email. "I've carried it for 3 years, occasionally rereading it and striving to better myself so that no woman would ever write such things about me again. Of all the evidence, that email hit me the hardest, which is why I've kept it with me. It's the same email I mentioned earlier in my story." Peter read the letter slowly and set it down on the table. Quickly, he grabbed a pen, scribbled a note on it, and to my surprise, abruptly left the restaurant. No glance back, no thanks, nothing. His expression remained impassive. I leaned over to see what he had written on the old email. "I'll return home shortly. Please wait here and I'll call you in 15 minutes. I need to check under the bottom drawer of my living room dresser. Be right back, Peter. I sensed he'd seen the truth, even if he wasn't thrilled about it. Something told me I hit too close to home on all three matters. The email seemed to be the tipping point, and he needed to verify it himself. Leaving a note on Sue's table, I departed. There was no way I'd stay in that restaurant with anyone tonight. Back in the foyer, I phoned my client, who didn't mind rescheduling the meeting since they were running late anyway. Before leaving, I glanced once more at the table. Sue returned, searching for Peter. Sitting down, she noticed her old email and Peter's note below. Her face drained of color as she recognized the contents of her old email and Peter's message. The last time I saw my wife, she was sobbing so intensely that the entire restaurant turned to look. I felt a pang of pity, but at the same time I was indifferent. That was the final encounter with her. I still wonder if Peter found something under the dresser drawer. Sue's tears indicated he might have. Reading the memo brought back memories I wished to forget. Amy, my faithful but cheating ex-wife, is now my boss. How ironic. I should have expected this, but I was just relieved to be out of the marriage. Now it's haunting me even more. Amy once said I was a heart attack waiting to happen, and she was right. My doctor had warned me, but I ignored it, thinking my hard work for the family was justified. Amy was always ambitious, craving luxuries like our mansion, the pool, and an unused country club membership. It was my duty to provide, or so I believed. The love of my life is now in charge of my life again. This realization snapped me out of my apathy. I couldn't work under her, not after learning about her affairs. I packed my things, picked up my resignation letter, and left the office for the last time, leaving the letter, phone, car keys, and credit card on Megan's desk. It's been a pleasure working with you, Megan. I wish you the best. You're a valuable employee, and I appreciate all your help. Take care, and don't let her mess with you. If she does, use me as a threat to get fair treatment. So, you're really leaving, Sam? This isn't just a threat? She asked, waving my letter. Yes, Megan. You know I can't work for someone I don't respect. With all those horrible details, she's lost any chance of my respect. I'll miss you, Sam. She'll be furious when she finds out. She's been pestering me about your workload. I didn't tell her anything, but I felt like I was betraying you. I'm sorry. I should have spoken up sooner. I smiled. Don't worry. You have to protect your job. There's nothing you could have said to change things. I knew it was over when the merger memo came. I have no secrets here, as you know. What should I say when she asks where you are? Tell her the truth. She won't be able to twist it. Do what she wants as long as it doesn't compromise your values. It was my pleasure, dear. I'll stay in touch, I said, shaking her hand and kissing it. As I was getting into my car, a black limousine arrived at the office and Amy stepped out with two well-dressed men, looking every bit the high-status businesswoman. In reality, though, we all knew she was just a well-paid escort with a title. She looked professional in her business suit, but she always looked good in any outfit. She didn't see me, which was perfect. I waited a couple of minutes for her to enter the building before leaving the parking lot for the last time. I had settled my affairs, sold what I needed, and put everything else in storage. My doctor had advised a change of scenery, and I finally took his advice. I spent the next 3 months traveling, sightseeing, and taking a break from work stress. Eventually, I ended up in a small town with a temperate climate, friendly residents, and excellent fishing. I rented a small 3-bedroom cottage with a workshop by the lake, with an option to buy. It had everything I needed to start fresh. Sitting on the back porch, sipping a cold drink, I wondered how Amy reacted to my disappearance. I decided to call Megan the next day to find out. Hey Megan, it's Sam. How's it going over there? Sam, it's so good to hear from you. I was starting to worry you'd disappeared. I laughed, sitting on my deck watching the water. Not quite vanished, but the view here is amazing. Wish you were here. How's everything there? Sam, you sure know how to stir things up. Amy has been causing chaos, laying people off left and right. Kevin Paxton quit last week after she moved him to a windowless basement office. He couldn't stand it and resigned. I'm sorry to hear that. Kevin was one of the best. What is Amy thinking? She's going to ruin everything. How is she treating you? Megan chuckled. She's frustrated. She tried to fire me because I let you go without her talking to you first. I told her she could try to fire me, but I'd take her and the company to court. I reminded her of what you said, and she backed off, realizing her actions could backfire. Megan giggled and continued. So now I'm the secretary to the demanding executive VP of operations. I guess it's about keeping your enemies closer. I told her I wanted a substantial pay raise with the promotion. She wasn't happy, but just grinned. In the end, I got what I wanted. Megan updated me on the latest office gossip. I was glad my departure had disrupted Amy's plans. I changed my life for my own good, and Amy's presence pushed me to stop procrastinating. This was just a bonus. However, I worried it might affect everyone else, which wasn't my intention. The next morning, I ran out of sugar and decided to visit a nearby store. Their lot borders mine, with an open paddock in between. As I left the store, I almost bumped into a young couple. After apologizing, I noticed a stressed woman in her early 20s behind the counter. "Can I help you?" she asked, as the baby started whimpering and a couple of cars pulled up to the gas pumps. She sighed, "Where is Jillian when I need her?" I smiled and said, "Can I help? I'm Sam and I live nearby. It looks like the baby needs attention and I just need some sugar. I can help out until you're done or until Jillian arrives. Why don't I handle the customers while you take care of your baby?" She smiled back. "I'm Vivian, and I'd be very grateful for your help, Sam." I took care of the travelers while they filled their tanks, washing windshields and chatting with them. After collecting their payments, I returned to the store, where another customer had just walked in. I went over to chat with him. "What can I do for you, sir?" "Just looking at your fishing rods," he replied. "I'm on a business trip and my car's in for repairs. It'll take all day, so I thought I'd do some fishing to pass the time." He looked like a businessman, much like I was a year ago. Seeing he was about to buy cheap gear, I asked, "Do you fish often?" He shook his head. "Not really, but I'd like to if I had time." I smiled and convinced him that investing in better equipment would increase his chances of catching fish and enjoying his time. I then helped a dozen other customers before Vivian finished settling her daughter. "Thank you so much, Sam. Why does it always get busy when you least expect it?" "Bessie doesn't usually fuss now, and Jillian is always here by this time." I grinned. To explain it, I'd need to understand quantum mechanics, which I don't. Maybe you need more reliable help. Vivian's face fell, and I quickly apologized, realizing I had upset her. With sad eyes and a tear, she said, "Sam, it's not your fault, but I'm a widow." Vivian told me her husband, Greg, an Army reservist, had been eliminated in a training accident. His truck flipped over and he died, never knowing he was going to be a father. Bessie was likely conceived the night before he left. Wiping her tears, Vivian said, "He would have been a good father. He had so many ideas, and this place was one of them," gesturing to the store and land. "Over the next few weeks, I often helped out at the store. I know what you're thinking, and you're probably right. Vivian was beautiful, and my hormones had been dormant for a while, but it also restored my sense of self-worth. Amy's infidelity had made me feel unneeded and inadequate as a provider. That was the final insult. Vivian seemed to understand my need to help. She never directly asked for it, but always appreciated it. Spending time with her made me feel good. She was fun, caring, and grateful, which was exactly what I needed. I was heading home from another day at the store when my phone interrupted my thoughts. "Hi, Sam. Lucky you're not a secretary. You wouldn't last a day with your phone manners," a woman's voice purred. "Hi, Megan. You caught me off guard. It's almost 7 p.m. Is something urgent?" Megan's tone changed. "I waited until I got home to call because I think my work phone is tapped. Sam, you need to be careful. She hired a private investigator to follow you. She asked me to set it up, and I can't refuse without risking my job. But I wanted to warn you so you can lay low," I sighed. "Is she trying to intimidate me to pass away?" "I don't know, Sam. She's stressed, working long hours to turn things around. She looks older and has gained weight." "She can't be pregnant. Or maybe she could, but not by me." Megan giggled. "No, it's from stress and comfort eating. She's frantic to find you and blames me for letting you leave without talking to her." Good grief. Ignoring her is useless. Here's an idea. In a week, give her a fake report saying the investigator couldn't find me, but confirm my phone is active. Tell her you convinced me to talk to her. Megan sounded hesitant. "Are you sure, Sam? I don't feel good about this." "Don't worry, Megan. Look after yourself first. I appreciate your help, but don't put yourself at risk." A week later, Megan texted me before work. PH02, BB2DayB, ready for. Call today sometime. I chuckled at the acronyms. BB was for bad boss. Damn these young people and their tech. I wondered what I'd say to Amy, but decided to figure it out when the time came. As promised, the call came. I answered Amy's number. Yes, Amy, what do you want? She seemed caught off guard by my abrupt greeting. What's that cow my secretary been up to? I hung up. The phone rang again. Damn it, Sam. I hung up again. The next call, Megan quickly answered. Are you going to talk to her or not? I grinned. Tell her to be polite next time and she might get more than 2 words out of me. I'm sick of her attitude. Megan chuckled. My pleasure, Sam. Talk to you later. 5 minutes later, the phone rang again. Sam? Yes, Amy. What do you want? A pause. Can I talk to you for a minute? I'm listening. Another pause. Megan cried on your shoulder. What did she say? Megan is very capable. It doesn't matter what she told me. Your so-called secretary is the only reason you're talking to me now. You should be grateful to her. So, what do you want? I thought I heard a sigh. I'm sorry, Sam. I'm just a little cranky lately. I know Megan is doing a good job and I appreciate it. Amy was trying to diffuse my irritation, but I wondered why she gave in so quickly. Get to the point, Amy. What do you want? I heard Amy suppress a sob. I really need your advice, Sam. I thought we would work together as a team, but you quit and disappeared before I could explain. I snickered. I saw the writing on the wall, Amy. When your company bought mine, I didn't see the point in staying to be humiliated again. So have a happy life, Amy. Goodbye. No, please, Sam, I need to talk to you in person, not over the phone. Just give me 30 minutes to pitch my idea. I'm begging you. I don't know who else to turn to. I gritted my teeth, wanting to hang up and forget her. After a long pause, I finally said, Okay, Amy, but I'm not chasing you. You come to my office. I'll arrange it with Megan, and she'll let you know when and where. I hung up before she could respond, and half expected her to call back, but the phone stayed silent all night. Amy was annoyed. Why do I have to go through Megan? Why can't you just give me Sam's address so I can go alone? Megan gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles turning white. Amy, this is what Sam wants. He doesn't want to see you. In his words, my way or the highway. I don't enjoy sitting in the car with you for hours either. But if he wants me to bring you, you'll have to deal with it. I won't be there for your conversation, though. I'll make myself scarce. I started chopping vegetables for the Italian sauce I was making for dinner. Megan had called 30 minutes ago to let me know they'd arrive soon, which meant they'd be here in about 20 minutes. I wanted Amy to feel uncomfortable, so I stayed busy to put her at a disadvantage. 15 minutes later, I heard a knock. It's open. Come in. Well, don't you look completely at home, remarked Megan with a genuine smile. I chuckled. Hi, Megan. Good to see you too. You look good. I saw Amy standing behind her looking worried. Amy? That was all I said, but I noticed her tired eyes and weight gain. Megan's estimate of 10 pounds might have been a bit harsh, but it wasn't far off. I could use a drink, Megan said, giving me a friendly hug and a kiss on the cheek. The country air suits you. You look great. There's wine, beer, or Coke in the fridge, I replied, holding up my grubby hands. Want something to drink? I glanced at Amy. Amy noticed my cold tone and lowered her head, realizing this meeting would be tough. Hi, Sam. Wine would be nice. Megan's right. You look good. Megan opened a bottle of white wine, poured 2 glasses, and handed one to Amy. Which way to the view? She asked, waving the wine bottle. I'll leave you 2 alone. Remember, she pointed the bottle at me. I'm not here to clean up a crime scene, so behave. I smiled and pointed to the back door. Don't worry about me. There's a fishing rod on the deck if you want to try it out. Megan rolled her eyes. Not likely. I wouldn't know what to do with a fish even if I caught one, she said as she slipped out the door, leaving Amy and me alone. Take a seat and tell me why you're here, I said, pointing to a chair and returning to chopping herbs. Amy hesitantly sat down, trying to lighten the mood. Nice place you have here. Small, but nice. I tensed, my irritation showing. This isn't small talk, Amy, I said, focusing on the basil. Just say what you need to, and we can get back to our lives. Amy sighed and took a sip of wine. Can I ask one question? Ask as many as you want, Amy. Doesn't mean I'll answer, but try. Why did you leave? She asked, watching for any sign of anger. Knowing my temper, she could see I was trying to stay calm. I dropped the knife and turned to her. You don't need a degree to understand my motives, Amy. You're a vice president now. You must have some brains. Figure it out. Amy looked irritated. That was a low blow, even for you, Sam. I'm capable of doing my job, but I'm not a mind reader. I folded my arms and stared at her. Amy seemed to wilt under my gaze. You're right, Amy. You're not a mind reader, and few people are. But in your job, you need to read people, understand and guess their motives. A good manager finds and utilizes their employees' talents for the company's benefit. It has to be a win-win situation. Do you really want to know what I think of you and your talents, Amy? She shivered at my question, clearly expecting an answer that wouldn't boost her confidence. But she squared her shoulders. Okay, Sam, I'll bite. What do you think of my corporate talents? I almost laughed at her weak attempt at teasing and returned to cooking. You're a bulldozer, Amy. You have the finesse of a bull in a china shop. Her open mouth said it all. Bulldozer, she repeated, stunned. Care to elaborate on that? I smiled inwardly as I continued chopping. Yes, Amy, bulldozer. You take the most direct path to your goal without considering the effort or analyzing the situation. You don't think about who you can help or who can help you. You only think about yourself, charging ahead and ignoring anyone in your way. That's why you're in your current unenviable position. You've burned bridges and ruined opportunities. I saw a tear in her eye. For the first time, she seemed at a loss. No, I don't want to, she said weakly. Everything I did was for us. But your ego got in the way. I know I hurt you, and I'm sorry. If you had stayed, I could have explained my plan. You still haven't told me why you left. I tasted the sauce and added more salt. I saw the writing on the wall, Amy. I know you're here to cut the deadwood. You're the person sent to remove those who needed to go for the company to move forward. I agree it was necessary. I just made it easier for you to make those decisions. I saw the anticipation in her eyes. This was the conversation she wanted. Sam Beckman, for a smart man, you sure do some stupid things. I had no intention of firing you. If you were smart, you'd know that. Everything I did was for us, to make your dreams come true. That's quite a trick. It tugs at my heartstrings and strokes my ego simultaneously. But I never said you weren't good at stroking. I remember countless times we sat in the kitchen talking about how the fools at the top were ruining the company. I believed in you, Sam. I believed you could get the company back on its feet. Now I have the chance to help you turn your ideas into reality. I worked hard to give you that chance, telling my bosses I could make your company profitable. And what did that get me? Now it's the "it's all your fault" angle. You've left me to my fate without hearing me out. I keep fighting, working long hours on what you said could be done. All I need is a little help from the one man I've ever loved. It's you, Sam. We can sit back and reap the rewards of our efforts. I love you, and this is our future. I'm not naive enough to think we'll get back together, though I dream about it. But I see now that we can have a good business relationship and be happy. So, what do you say? How about we call a truce, start working together, and show them we're a force to be reckoned with? Amy took another sip of wine and leaned back, her fervor fading. She had made her point, and now it was up to me. While she talked, I finished the sauce and put water on to boil for the spaghetti. The only thing I could think of were Julius Caesar's last words, "Et tu, brute." Betrayal was my first thought when I found out about her actions. Despite everything, Amy was very attractive. One thought kept me sharp, encapsulating her past and present actions. Good, Amy. A good manager considers all aspects before deciding. Let's say I buy into your brilliant plan. Why do you think I can help you? Amy's eyes flashed with annoyance. I've told you I believe you can do it. You have the credibility within the company to get the support of the employees. They trust and respect you. Your obstacles were with upper management, and my position as VP has removed them. I smiled sadly at her naivety. You don't see that your very presence as VP undermines my ability to gain support. But I'm not surprised. You refuse to believe you've done anything wrong. Others see it differently, Amy. I saw the concern on Amy's face as I continued. Have you ever wondered why you struggle to gain support for your ideas? The rumor mill has done a thorough job informing everyone about your business practices and ethics, and not a word of it came from me. Amy's face froze. I was treading into territory she wanted to avoid. People see you as someone who slept her way to the top, leaving more deserving employees in the dust. They know about our failed marriage and how I kept my dignity and their respect by divorcing you. If I accepted your offer, it would signal that everything you did was acceptable. I'd go from a wronged husband to a disgraced employee, losing their respect and my effectiveness. Tears formed in Amy's eyes as my words sank in. Her confidence was cracking. I don't believe you, Sam. I've shown I'm willing to work hard. I took a powerful position to get the job done. I'm capable, or Jason wouldn't have given me the job. I shook my head, my anger turning to sadness. Amy truly believed her own narrative, perhaps out of self-preservation. Did Jason approach you with the takeover offer, or did you push him? Amy wiped her face with a tissue from her purse and straightened up. Hopefully it doesn't matter what you or anyone else thinks. I'm not Jason's puppet. I approached him, and he put up a lot of barriers before letting me present my proposal to the board. I nodded. Just as I thought. Did Jason entertain you when he finally let you speak to the board? Her sigh gave her away. Trying to gather her thoughts, she asked, Why do you think that? I grinned. Do you know why I was good at my job, Amy? I've always made profiles of everyone I meet, including you. My mistake was trusting you unconditionally because I loved you. That cost me dearly, so I adjusted your profile. As my grandfather said, there's no point in getting older if you're not getting smarter. I assess people by their words and actions to see if they fit their profile. Knowing Jason, I doubt he cares if you succeed. If you fail, he'll blame the board for approving your proposal. I saw a glimmer of realization in her eyes as I continued. If you succeed, Jason gets the credit for bringing in a promising executive. If you fail, he'll just point fingers at the board. Jason doesn't care if you're smart enough or foolish enough to think you can pull this off. As long as you keep him entertained, he'll be satisfied. You're on your own, Amy, a small fish in a big pond full of hungry piranhas. Amy clutched the napkin tightly. Everything I'd said was true, and she seemed frightened by the reality of her situation, but she still tried to deny it. So, you don't think I can do it? I shrugged. No, Amy, I know you can't. I saw anger building in Amy, but continued. It would take a huge Saturn V rocket to launch you from your VP position into corporate oblivion. Where will your precious security be then, Amy? I turned away to calm myself. From what I hear, you've only managed to spin your wheels and create so much smoke that everyone else struggles to do their jobs. I'll be surprised if the next shareholders meeting doesn't announce a 25% drop in profits. But that's just speculation. No matter how you spin it, it all comes down to your reasons for starting this. You said you loved me and did it for both of us. Amy shuddered but nodded. But really, it's all about your safety, not ours. If you loved me, you would have tried to stop me from working myself to pass away. You called me a heart attack waiting to happen. I paused, then continued. You didn't try to stop me, or if you did, it wasn't convincing. You just waited for me to drop dead. You could have threatened divorce to make me think about us. Your infidelity made me realize things. That's why I'm here now, and feeling great. I love you, Sam. I didn't want to divorce you. You didn't want to divorce me, but you were willing to let me work myself to pass away. Does that sound loving? I finished sarcastically. Amy couldn't refute my arguments and couldn't bear to look at me. I didn't mean what I said then, and I love you even now. I regret a lot of what I said, Amy pleaded. My grim face must have shown doubt. I'm sure you believe what you're saying, Amy, but that doesn't change our situation. Don't you realize I can't trust you now, either personally or in business? I've decided to end this discussion. You made it to the top. Now you'll have to wait for Jason to retire or disappear before you can aim for CEO. You've decided this is a good time to solidify your position and go for that coveted role. Amy tried to object, but I stopped her. Your plan is clear. Take over my old firm and get me to work hard again to benefit you. I'm amazed you expected me to follow your orders. When I kicked you out, I thought it was clear I wasn't weak. Maybe it was my fault for setting you up to fail. I saw Amy struggling to hold it together. One moment I blamed you. The next, I was taking responsibility. You're talking nonsense, Sam. I think you're the one with it backward, she countered. I hung my head and sighed in despair. Good, Amy. You've heard being cruel to be kind. I wasn't being kind. I led you on and then had to cut you down harshly. Instead, I went to Jason and made him fulfill his promise to make you a GP. I didn't want to see you left to suffer, even though you deserved it. I made a mistake by making you think there was a chance I'd take you back. Your love cards on my birthday, Christmas, and other occasions proved that. I checked the sauce and added water to the nearly dry pot. If I did what I should have, you'd have disappeared to some unknown place to start over. That's what I want you to do now. Walk away and start over. Tears streamed down her face. You might have to go back to a secretarial job, but it won't be as bad as staying and fighting. You'll be lucky if you're allowed to lick stamps while some post office idiot entertains you. I watched as my words sank in. Her defiance, not humility, made me sad. I know I hurt you, Sam. I berate myself every day for it, but what you said is just evil. You don't believe in me, yet I believe in you. Well, if that's how you feel, watch and I'll show you how it's done. At that moment, there was a knock at the door. "Come in," I said irritably. "Is everything okay, Sam? I'm sorry if I'm interrupting," Vivian asked. I sighed, realizing I'd lost my temper, and checked my watch. "I'm sorry, Vivian. Please don't come in. Amy was just leaving." I glared at Amy, waiting for her to get up. Amy looked at Vivian standing in the doorway. She was younger, maybe by 5 or 10 years, and very pretty with long, flowing, dark blonde hair. Amy's face showed her realization of why Vivian was here. She turned to me, saw the food simmering on the stove, and began to cry as she understood the situation. I glanced at the dinner I was making for Vivian and me, recognizing what Amy was thinking. "What? You thought this was for you? I told you this wasn't a social event. Don't be upset that I invited a friend to dinner. We broke up years ago. The only reason I let you come here was to knock some sense into you." Amy stood up, head down, and rushed past Vivian, muttering, "Tell Megan I'll be waiting in the car." "I hope I didn't make things worse," Vivian said, watching Amy leave. "I can go if you need to deal with this. Can I tell Jillian I don't need her as a babysitter?" "It's not your fault. I'm glad you showed up when you did." I hugged Vivian and kissed her cheek. "You can watch the pasta for a minute. I need to tell Megan our meeting is over and she can take Amy home." I stepped out onto the back terrace and saw Megan napping in the afternoon sun. Amy's words echoed in my mind. Now that she was vice president, she had removed all the obstacles blocking my ideas, and it got me thinking. "How do you like the view?" I asked. "It's just like you said, Sam. Amazing." Megan smiled, closing her eyes. "How did it go in there? I didn't hear any fire shots." "Not well. She's not backing down. She's in the car waiting for you. Can I ask you something?" "Sure, Sam. You can ask me anything." I smiled weakly. "How do you see your future at work? How ambitious are you, Megan?" Her eyes widened at the unusual question. "I'm not sure what you're getting at, Sam, but if it's what I think, I'd like to get Amy's job first." She stood up. "I know I can do it well, but I won't compromise my values. Why do you ask?" "I think it's time to end this circus," I said determinedly. "Can you contact Kevin Paxton and meet me in town in 3 weeks? I might have an offer for both of you." Megan nodded. I led Megan back inside, where she saw Vivian at the stove. She poked me in the ribs, whispering, "Now I see why Amy ran off, you old dog." Megan's look made me smirk. "She's gorgeous and probably the final nail in Amy's coffin. Amy is out of her league. Never was in her league. I'm not even in her league. She's licking her wounded pride right now." I nodded, appreciating Vivian's beauty. "And she's just as lovely on the inside." Vivian looked up as I introduced Megan. "Nice to meet you. Sam has so many women in his life, I'm not sure he has room for me," she said hesitantly. Megan chuckled. "Don't worry about the other women you see Sam with. He's a one-woman man, sweetheart, and from what I can tell, he's got his eye on you. Watch out, though. Sam can be a real charmer when he's interested." I wasn't sure what Megan meant, as we hadn't been in social situations together. I felt my face redden. "I think you've said enough for one night, Megan. It's time to leave." As I nudged her toward the front door, she looked back with a final comment. "If you're smart, Vivian, you won't let this guy slip away." She kissed me on the cheek and said goodbye. "Be smart. I'll see you in 3 weeks." Vivian and I sat on the back deck, sipping Merlot and watching the waterfowl. We chatted casually about the day, and I told Vivian the details of my failed marriage to Amy and its aftermath. "You don't want to do this, do you, Sam?" Vivian observed. "No, I don't," I admitted, "but it has to be done. I can't let everyone lose their jobs because I took the easy way out. I have no choice." After a pause, Vivian said, "You know, Amy still has feelings for you." I almost laughed. "I knew that before, but I don't think so now, not after what I said to her today." I was harsh, but it didn't seem to matter. Vivian smiled. "For all your toughness, it's clear you care about others, Sam, including Amy. We women appreciate that quality in our men." I had no response, so I went back to my beer. Vivian patted my arm reassuringly. "I believe you'll do the right thing for everyone." I nodded with a grim feeling. "But I'm afraid not everyone will agree." "You didn't make her bed, Sam." "She did, and now she has to lie in it," Vivian said, breaking the silence after a couple of minutes. I was lost in my thoughts when she caught me off guard. "Speaking of beds, when are you going to show me yours?" Her statement came out of nowhere and surprised me. "Huh?" Vivian chuckled. "Megan told me that if I wanted you, I shouldn't hesitate. She said, 'If you're smart, Vivian, you won't let this guy out of your grasp.' So here I am, holding on to someone I think is worth it." "So you're interested in more than just a platonic relationship?" I sounded like a nervous teenager testing the waters. My poor track record with women making it hard to look her in the eye. Vivian giggled. "You're blushing, Sam." My ears burned, and a sheepish grin spread across my face. "You sure know how to make a guy feel awkward." I rubbed my face to regain my composure. "That day I walked into your store, saw you looking shattered, and offered my help. I felt like a knight in shining armor rescuing a damsel in distress." Her smile was priceless. "You were my knight on his trusty steed that day, and you still are," Vivian said, kissing my cheek affectionately. "Since that day, I've depended on you. Now I understand why you've supported me all these months." She paused, seeing my confusion. "It must have been hard when Amy showed you weren't needed." "Well, if it helps, I need you, Sam. I haven't felt this comfortable and relaxed since Greg died." "Yes, it's a man thing. Amy didn't understand it, and I couldn't explain it either." Vivian patted my arm reassuringly. "You've been good to me, Sam, and I appreciate it. It wasn't until Megan's antics that I realized I had more than friendly feelings for you. So, do you want to take it to the next level?" Vivian's face showed sincerity and hope. "Well, madam, if you insist, I shall have to show you my etchings," I said with a sly grin. Vivian's face lit up. "Forget the etchings. I'm more interested in the tool you used to make them." We both laughed as she stood up and headed for the door, saying, "Race you to the bedroom." Later, I saw Kevin and Megan watching me walk into the restaurant. My mood must have been obvious. Kevin stood up and offered his hand. "Long time no see, old friend. It's great to see you after all these years. You look 10 years younger." I smiled, shaking Kevin's hand. "It's good to see you too. I'm doing great. How's life?" "Ooh, average to average. Can't complain because no one ever listens," Kevin said. I smiled and kissed Megan on the cheek. "You look as radiant as ever. I don't know what you saw in this brute, but I hope he treated you well," Megan chuckled. "He may be rough, but I like the rugged type." "How do you know?" Kevin asked. I smiled. "Because I'm a people watcher. I saw your reaction when I asked Kevin to be here today. I think you two would make a formidable team." Kevin grinned. "Speaking of which, what's the offer?" I chuckled. "Straight to business, Kevin. You'll never change." "Okay, let's talk business. Then we can relax and enjoy the food." As the waitress served our drinks, I began. "The company is in serious trouble. If nothing is done soon, everyone will be looking for new jobs. As you know, options are limited." I pulled several folders from my briefcase and handed a white one to Kevin. "Feel free to disagree or add anything." While Kevin studied the folder, I opened another. "Here's a list of people you need to get on your side. I'll leave it to you to figure out how." Kevin flipped through the folder. "It's clear you've thought this through. Not only are you targeting JPL and Amy, but also Dobson Inc. and Jason." I saw Kevin's expression and knew what he was thinking. "We don't have a choice, Kevin. Since Dobson bought out JPL, we need to attack from both sides. My original focus was on JPL, but now we must target Dobson's board too. If you can get the board on your side and Megan handles JPL, we have a chance, albeit a small one." Kevin handed the folder to Megan. "You're right. Sam's situation is more than dire. It's anorexic. But I see potential. It wouldn't hurt to involve Jack Deacon. He's a master at accounting." I nodded grimly. "Jack is a genius with numbers, but we didn't get along. He never liked me." Megan nodded while looking through the folder. "I agree with Kevin. Jack should be involved for his creative accounting skills. I'll talk to him first." Kevin picked up the second folder and examined the list of names. "I'm not sure I can meet some of these people, let alone bring them on board." I smirked at Kevin's doubt. "What do you think I've been doing for the last 3 weeks? There's one name, Slovak, that I couldn't get close to. If he's not on board, none of this will work. How did you become so influential?" "Influential? My back. If I were that good, Slovak would be on our side." I handed Kevin another folder. "This is a list of meetings you have scheduled with everyone except Slovak." Megan looked up from the folder. "Isn't Slovak Jerry Cambridge's uncle? Maybe Jerry can arrange a meeting with him." Kevin and I exchanged glances and shrugged. Kevin asked, "Can you figure this out, Megan?" Megan smiled. "I have a meeting with Jerry tomorrow about the trip plans. I'll ask him then." This made me feel a bit better. "I've organized the times and dates for you. Things are getting messy, even in the higher levels of government." I outlined my concerns, but didn't have a solid plan yet. "We need to finalize the details and get everyone together to complete the final version." Megan shook her head. "I can't believe Jason didn't see this coming." "Oh, he knows," I scoffed. "He just doesn't care. He has a scapegoat, and Amy's in for a nasty surprise when he betrays her." Megan wrinkled her nose sympathetically. Amy may be selfish, but she doesn't deserve that. I nodded. Jason will need to act before the next quarterly meeting to stay clean. We must act quickly and precisely. If we impress the big shots, we'll succeed. Kevin shook his head. You think we're going to accept your offer? I smiled. Come on, Kevin, think about it. What do you have to lose? If Amy could pitch her ideas, you can do it too. You haven't found a job that matches your skills, have you? I know you have issues with Amy, and Jason isn't on your Christmas list either. I nodded to Megan. She believes in you as much as I do. You'll run with it. I've done all I can. Now you just need to bring home the bacon. Kevin laughed along with Megan. All tied up with a neat pink ribbon, he said sarcastically. Megan frowned. What about Jason? He won't give up without a fight, and he has the support to sabotage us before we even start, she said, looking through the second folder. I grinned. Leave Jason to me. You won't have to deal with him. Just keep Amy busy so she doesn't do something stupid like commit professional self-destruction while taking everyone else down. Megan smirked. After your conversation the other day, she's our least worry. Vivian's presence rattled her, and now she's determined to prove you wrong. You really messed with her head, Sam. I've had to tweak a lot of her proposals just to make her look somewhat competent. Kevin, Megan, and I enjoyed our meal while discussing our plans. As we said our goodbyes, we arranged to meet again in 2 days with others to finalize our strategy. The meeting was heated. Megan and Kevin had brought in a half-dozen allies to help. Jack Deacon was one of them, and as I predicted, he was hostile but listened. Let me see the financial packet, he demanded. We watched as he quickly reviewed the numbers. This is nonsense, Beckman. You can't substantiate these numbers. I wanted to snap at him but managed to stay calm. They're just estimates, projected approximations. Deacon smiled sarcastically. Don't quit your day job, Beckman. These numbers are as unreliable as weather forecasts. It's time to show the money. I knew I had to handle him carefully. Listen, Deacon, can I call you Jack? I know we haven't seen each other since Amy took over, but you're here because you're the best at what you do. I could see his chest heaving, sensing I was on the right track. Jack grinned. I may seem like a mere laborer to you, but I'm not so socially inferior that I don't recognize being patronized. I gritted my teeth in annoyance. I know that sounded patronizing, but it doesn't make my words any less true. I addressed everyone in the room. What will you do when the next shareholders meeting rolls around? I don't care if you agree with this proposal or not. I can leave and return to my life, letting you figure out how to get in line for unemployment. Jack, you're a genius with numbers and can get a job quickly. But what about them? We need you to get creative and make those projections work. I saw the gears turning in his mind. So this isn't some scam to move your wife up the corporate ladder? I shook my head sadly. No, Jack, she's my ex-wife. She'll be lucky to shuffle papers in a dark, windowless room if we pull this off. I regret not burning that bridge when I divorced her. I'm here to fix that mistake. Whether this takeover works or not, both she and Jason will be history. I guarantee it. Jack looked around the room and then back at the folder. You know, Sam, I've been doing so much with so little for so long. Now I have the chance to do everything with nothing. He grinned widely. What's the deadline for this miracle? I looked at Kevin. I need it by 3 p.m. tomorrow, he replied cautiously. Holy crap, Jack exclaimed, eyes wide. I'm fine, Kevin, but even God would struggle to sort this out by then. We all exchanged glances, and I started to worry that my plan might fail. Then Jack said something surprising. If I pull this off, I want a sign on my desk that says, God, he joked. After a moment, Kevin grinned. I'll personally engrave it, and everyone will kneel and pay their respects if you bring me those numbers by 3 p.m. tomorrow. We all sighed in relief. Okay, folks, we're burning the midnight oil. Call whoever you need to and get to work. Megan asked if she could invite some of the girls from the typing group to help. It's your choice, Megan. Show us what you can do. I'm here to help with any questions, but it's up to you now, I said, handing control to her. Oh my God, she exclaimed, glaring at Kevin. Sam's right, honey. Pull yourself together and show everyone they can rely on you in a crisis. Kevin and I stepped back as Megan took a deep breath and got to work. Within an hour, she was organizing groups and brainstorming ideas. Jack argued with her until she snapped. I don't care how many people you need to bring in to meet the deadline, Jack. You know what we're up against, so just do it, okay? Kevin chuckled. I think you were right, Sam. She is a hard worker. I smiled at Kevin's pride in her. I lightly slapped his arm. I never doubted it, Kevin. I tapped my temple in agreement and went to help. I walked into Jason's office, past his shocked secretary. "I'm sorry, sir, but you can't go in there." Jason waved her away in disgust. "It's okay, Lynn. What's this Beckman invasion about?" Clearly, Jason was upset to see me. "That's no way to start a negotiation, Jason. I'd think a man of your business acumen would know when to be a bit more contrite." I wore a menacing smile. Jason sat back, waiting. I knew in a battle of wills, the first to speak loses. Jason, sweating, finally interrupted. "Are you just going to stand there? Or are you going to tell me why you're here? I have a shareholders meeting in an hour." "I'm here to help you pack, idiot," I informed him. "And where am I supposed to go?" Jason clearly didn't like how this was going. "I don't care where you go as long as you're out of here by the end of the day," I said with a grin. "But I'd suggest moving to another state, maybe even the other side of the country." "What if I refuse to leave? I'm close to retirement and not giving up my lucrative package for someone like you." I shook my head. "You have two choices. Resign now and walk away with what you have, or stay and watch me dismantle your life, including your family. You'll be lucky to afford a cup of coffee." Jason frowned. "I did what you wanted. I made Amy vice president, and she now controls JPL. Why the threats? We've never met, but I thought you kept your word. What changed your mind? Are you coming after me because of the past?" I leaned forward, placing both hands on his desk, our faces inches apart. "You changed my mind. I was holding up my end until you broke it. Now you pay. You screwed Amy over and let her present a doomed proposal to the board. You saw a chance to kill two birds with one stone, knowing she'd turn to me for help, and you knew I wouldn't. You broke our agreement, and now I demand payment." Sweat trickled down Jason's face as he listened, realizing everything I said was true. "I didn't break our deal, Beckman. She came to me. I only gave her a chance to prove herself. If she's in this position, it's her fault." "Don't crap me, you lowlife," I said, sweeping items off his desk in anger. "You could have stopped her. Even a fifth grader could see she had no chance without your help. It was your choice, and you made the wrong one. Now fix it. Resign or watch your life get destroyed." Jason's face showed a range of emotions, and I enjoyed watching him struggle. "I doubt you have enough on me to follow through on your threats," he said. I smiled, watching him mentally hit dead ends. "Do you think I've been idle? I have dirt on your affairs, corporate fraud, embezzlement, and more. Your choice, jail or retirement." I saw realization dawn in his eyes as he understood his only option was to leave. "Kevin Paxton is talking to your board right now with a plan that will ruin you. When I leave here, I'm handing everything I have to them." That broke Jason. He pressed the intercom. "Lynn, come in with a pad and pencil. I need to dictate a letter." I walked to his wine cabinet and poured a scotch. "No need to hurry, Jason. You win. I'll be gone by the end of the day." As I sipped my drink, his secretary entered and sat to take dictation. "No problem, Jason. I'll make sure to send your email." Lynette sensed the tension as she waited for Jason to start dictating. By the time he finished, she could barely contain her laughter and quickly left the office. Seeing her reaction, I knew Jason wouldn't have time to gather his belongings before leaving. As he exited his office for the last time, I called out, "I hear the weather is nice at the South Pole this time of year. I won't be looking for you there. Have a good day, Jason." Lynette returned a few minutes later and hugged me. "Thank you, Mr. Beckman. Thank you so much." I pulled back, confused. "Why are you thanking me?" Tears welled up in Lynette's eyes. "Jason tried to blackmail me. He's been making advances, just hints so far, but I think he planned to push harder if I didn't comply. I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you've done." I was furious that Jason had behaved this way. I knew Amy had served her time, and now Jason was targeting Lynette. I decided his fate was sealed, and his marriage was likely in jeopardy. "If all goes well, he will just ask you to do your job well. He's a fair and honest man who values employee loyalty." Lynette kissed me on the cheek. "You're on my Christmas list now, and I'll try to talk my husband into naming our next son after you," she grinned. "Thanks again for your help." She handed me the envelope. Typing this letter was the most fun I've ever had. 6 months later, I walked into the same office Jason had left. "Good morning, Lynn. Is the boss in?" "Good morning, Mr. Beckman. Yes, Mr. Paxton is expecting you." As I reached for the door, she added, "Mr. Beckman, you were right. He's everything a secretary could want in a boss. Thanks again." I grinned as I opened the door. "My pleasure, Lynn. And call me Sam. Mr. Beckman was my father." Lynette chuckled and waved. I asked, sinking into a chair, "How does it feel to be CEO of one of the most profitable companies in the stock market?" "Sam, you old idiot. Where have you been? How are you? I can't tell you how much I appreciate what you've done for everyone, especially Megan and me. She still pinches herself every morning to make sure it's not a dream. I raised an eyebrow. Oh, really? How do you know that? Are you waking up next to her? Is a mini merger planned? I joked. Kevin shrugged. We're in the negotiation stage, but a deal is likely soon. Megan would love to have you at the signing. And I hear you have a little filly you're nursing too. I laughed. Exactly. You had a business to save. I had one to build. Vivian is a fine thoroughbred. If I get the chance, I'll hitch my wagon to her. As our banter subsided, Kevin asked more seriously, Have you heard about Amy? I grew solemn. Yes, Megan called when she was taken to the hospital. The stress was too much and she snapped. Megan asked if I would visit her, but I thought it would only make things worse until she gets professional help. Kevin nodded. Yeah, you're probably right. Megan feels a bit sorry for her. She might offer Amy an entry-level position at JPL, maybe as a secretary. I hope that doesn't offend you. I shook my head. No, I don't hate her. I don't even like her anymore. She's just someone I once knew. I hope she gets better and moves on. Kevin leaned back. So, no desire to come back? I could find you a good job with a great financial package. I grinned. Not a chance. Besides, you don't need me. From what I hear, you've got God working for you now. Kevin burst into laughter. Oh yeah, I almost forgot about Jack. He got his plaque and earned everyone's respect. You were right. He's a math genius. For a while, he was a hotshot. I'd walk into board meetings an hour before the shareholders meeting with his financial report in hand. Kevin giggled. What's so funny? I asked. I was just thinking about how Jack looked when the girls would sneak up on him. We'll see how socially awkward he is when he tries to figure out women with math formulas. If he succeeds, I'll believe he's a god. I laughed. I would have loved to see that and attend the board meeting, but I had other business. While you were grooming board members, poor Jason was sweating at the table you now occupy. Kevin smiled. If you ever need a job, let me know. I shook my head. I have what I want now. Vivian and I have opened our family resort. I'm here to offer you corporate rates for Thanksgiving weekend. You could have contests and promote team building. Kevin nodded. I think we can agree. Maybe a fishing contest or two will foster camaraderie. Vivian and I were invited to Kevin and Megan's wedding, and now they have 2 wonderful boys. They are still a formidable team in the business world. At Christmas, we get cards from Lynn and her family. She even talked her husband into naming their next child after me. Her name is Samantha, short for Sam. Jason hasn't been heard from since his wife dumped his clothes on the lawn and turned on the sprinklers. His Elvis autographed guitar became a necklace for his favorite garden gnome after Nancy dropped it on his head. I assume he's hunting penguins in Antarctica to keep warm, but that's just a rumor. And Amy, after getting the help she needed to recover from what Jason did to her, she accepted Megan's offer for an entry-level secretary job. She sold her luxurious mansion and bought a modest apartment within walking distance of work. She'll never be part of the elite business environment again, but she has her own home and will work until retirement. I talked to her at the corporate Thanksgiving party at the lake. She was hesitant to come until Megan convinced her to unwind. We chatted and she apologized for her arrogance, admitting she was out of line. I also apologized for jeopardizing her safety, but it was necessary to save everyone else's jobs. After therapy, she realized how flawed her thinking had been. She even laughed when I told her about Jason's downfall. She had a relaxing weekend, mostly sunbathing with coworkers. I don't know much about her social life, but Megan mentioned she occasionally dates but rarely stays in a relationship for long. Honestly, I don't have time to think about it. It's her life, and she has to live with it. 6 months later, Vivian and I got married and moved her and Bessie into my cottage. I watched as she took out a picture of her late husband, Greg, from her suitcase, kissed it, and placed it in a drawer. Touched, I walked over, pulled out a picture of Glory, and placed it on her dressing table. Greg deserves to see his wife happy, well-groomed, and loved, don't you think? Vivian smiled tearfully and hugged me. You're a good man, Samuel. I think Greg and you would have been great friends. My guardian angel has been looking out for me, and now I have 2 soulmates. I felt splendid, better than I had in years. When Bessie is old enough, you'll have to tell her all about her father. They both deserve that. Our fishing resort is growing steadily. Jillian now has an apartment attached to the store, so we always know where to find her. We've added more cabins with docks for weekend fishing enthusiasts. I spend most days in my workshop doing boat repairs and general maintenance. Vivian runs the store, and Bessie, now 5, is always underfoot. I've become a father figure to her, the only one she's ever known. Last summer, we surprised her with a little brother, Brady, who has temporarily relieved her of some of our attention. I fuss over both of them, and even my doctor is pleased. Maybe I should send Amy a thank you card. Just kidding.
My name is Ron, and my wife Lily and I have been happily married for 15 years. Our family brought me great joy, and I appreciated the love my wife gave me. Over time, our relationship grew, and we had 2 lovely daughters. Both of us had steady, successful jobs. Lily worked as a translator at a film studio, and I worked as a security guard at a company. My love for my wife was immeasurable, and I was confident in her everlasting devotion to me. We were in good health, living in a beautiful house in a nice neighborhood. Our life was full of happiness, and it felt perfect. After our second daughter was born, Lily struggled to lose the weight she gained, but her captivating blue eyes remained attractive. She chose not to wear contact lenses because they caused discomfort when reading or working with papers. Instead, she wore glasses with large lenses, which emphasized the attractiveness of her eyes, making them even more seductive. My love for her remained unchanged. I was sure that she really loved me, as our strong bond was quite obvious. Our family was filled with happiness because we had 2 beautiful daughters, and financial stability was never a concern. My life was filled with happiness until that fateful moment. After 15 years of marriage, an unpleasant incident occurred that threatened the harmony and perfection of our world. In recent years, Lily has developed a habit of going to parties with her female colleagues. They visited various pubs, alternating their favorite places. On Fridays, they met in these places after work. Lily often assured me that it was just an opportunity to chat and relax. Naturally, I didn't mind her spending time in such places. After all, I invariably came home in the early morning every day and took responsibility for our daughters. On those evenings when Lily was out with her friends, I cooked dinner for our girls and was happy to help them with their homework. Performing these duties brought me great joy. Lily usually returned home around 8 in the evening after her outings, which allowed us to enjoy the weekend with the whole friendly family. We loved to spend time together, which gave us all great pleasure, and by all means. We had dinner together with our daughters on Saturday evenings, but in recent months, there had been a change. Lily started coming home later than usual on the nights she spent time with her friends. Instead of coming home around 8, she'd come home closer to 10, and I could sense that she'd had a few drinks. Despite my remarks, I didn't voice my concern. After all, she remained the same affectionate and devoted wife she had always been. Every time she returned from an outing, her face lit up with a familiar smile, making me want to hug her tightly. I realized that going out with friends served as a way for Lily to relax, allowing her to escape from the pressures of a stressful work week. I reassured myself that her interactions with the co-workers she spent time with were harmless and purely for pleasure. Even if she started coming home later than usual, I saw no reason to worry. But a few weeks ago, on a Monday morning, I received an email from an anonymous sender, who introduced himself as just a friend. At first, I decided to delete the letter without reading it, but after thinking about it, I decided to take the time to familiarize myself with its contents. The letter I received was like this. I happened to be at the Black Crow last Friday evening and noticed your wife among a group of people. She seemed to be enjoying it immensely. I couldn't help but notice that she danced almost exclusively with one particular man from her company. In case you're interested, I decided to capture this moment and took a picture on my mobile phone. Take a good look at the photo, and if you still think there is nothing wrong with her actions, then feel free to ignore this message. There was a file attached to the email that needed to be opened to view the photo. I wondered why someone would send me this message if there was nothing surprising about it. Moreover, the letter had already planted doubts in me, and I felt uneasy about what I was about to find out. It was not pleasant to learn that Lily had danced while walking with a man she had never mentioned before. Up until now, I had always assumed that Lily dated exclusively female colleagues at parties. However, there was a possibility that she was dancing with someone who was already present at the Black Raven, who wasn't really part of their company. Nevertheless, a lump formed in my throat, and an uneasy feeling swept over me. Despite my inner hesitation, I gave in to my curiosity and opened the attachment. When the image appeared on the screen, It was noticeable that it was not quite centered, as if the photographer had taken precautions not to be noticed. In the background, I noticed my wife's colleagues, both men and women, sitting at a long table. Despite the slight blurring of the image, I could still make out my wife on the right, dancing on the dance floor. She was wearing a beige blouse decorated with red flowers and green leaves, and the same brown trousers. It was the same outfit that Lily had worn the last time she went out with her friends. Thus, I came to the conclusion that the photo I am looking at now was taken last Friday. That evening, she came home later than usual. It was 10:30 when she hugged me and looked at me intently. When I looked at the picture, I noticed her happy smile, but something drew my attention. She stood on the dance floor, held closely by a tall young man. They were tightly wrapped around each other, with Lily's arms around his neck. I was quite surprised by what I saw. I couldn't remember ever dancing with Lily in such a bad way, or behaving like that with any other woman in public. The man's lower body pressed against hers, and I couldn't help but imagine the sensations he must have felt due to his obvious attraction. In that position, it seemed natural to feel desire. Strangely, Lily didn't appear alarmed by what was happening. Instead, she wore a pleased smile, suggesting her active involvement when they locked eyes. I felt repulsed witnessing my wife, the mother of our 2 daughters, so close to a stranger and openly displaying affection in public. The disbelief I experienced was beyond words. I knew for certain she would never dance with me in public like that. I couldn't understand why she would allow a complete stranger to act this way with her. A question arose in my mind. Was he truly a stranger? Doubt crept in and grew rapidly, overpowering all my attempts to suppress it. Various scenarios involving my wife and unfamiliar men began to play out in my mind. A strong sense of nausea washed over me, leading me to rush to the bathroom where I regretfully vomited my breakfast. Perplexed, I observed Lily, my beloved wife, behaving in a manner that hinted at promiscuity. Was she really having an affair? How could she betray me and our 2 daughters like this? Countless other questions filled my thoughts, but one kept recurring. Who was this man? I couldn't help but assume he was a colleague of hers. How long had this secret involvement been happening right under my nose? What drove her to engage in such a deceitful relationship with him? Had she betrayed me? I was determined to uncover the truth and gather solid evidence of what had truly occurred. With a renewed sense of purpose, I tried to uncover the latest information about Lily's actions. For the next half hour, I retreated to the bathroom in my room, attempting to regain my composure and mental clarity. As time passed, a whirlwind of emotions stirred within me. Disappointment, sadness, anger, fueling a growing desire for revenge. I found myself gripped by intense feelings that provoked a strong reaction. At one point, I wanted to lash out at Lily, vent my anger and frustration. In the next moment, I wanted to embrace her and implore her to end her relationship with this man. Divorce seemed like a viable option, but within a few minutes, I was already considering forgiveness and giving her another chance. Sitting on the toilet, I began to question my sanity as these tumultuous thoughts consumed me. Eventually, I managed to regain control of my emotions. I decided to avoid impulsive actions and patiently monitor Lily's behavior before taking any definitive steps. It was crucial not to let my emotions dictate my decision, as I needed a clear understanding of the situation before making a choice. No, I had to remain patient and refrain from confronting her with what I had discovered. At the same time, I was resolute about uncovering the truth at any cost. I needed concrete evidence to determine if she was being unfaithful or simply indulging in excessive enjoyment. However, I couldn't ignore the fact that she had deceived me by withholding the full truth about her outings with her friends. I noticed that her workplace was just a few blocks from where I worked. Given my frequent business trips, it was relatively convenient for me to keep an eye on Lily. So, the next day, around 11:30 a.m., I discreetly parked my car at the far end of her workplace's parking lot. Thanks to the tinted windows in my company car, I was confident that I remained hidden from prying eyes as I carefully watched the exit door. I patiently waited there until 1 p.m., but she never appeared. I repeated this pattern throughout the week. Finally, on Friday at 12:15 p.m., I spotted Lily with 3 individuals, 2 men and a woman. They all got into a black BMW with Lily sitting in the front seat next to the driver. Without hesitation, I followed them. Our discreet journey took us through busy streets until we arrived at the parking lot of an upscale restaurant. From my spot across the street, directly facing the restaurant, I observed her cheerful laughter as they entered. Remaining in my car, I patiently awaited their departure, which occurred at 2 p.m. Lily walked alongside a tall man with blonde hair, the same man she had danced with in the photo I possessed. There was an air of excitement and camaraderie about them, evident in her playful interactions with him. It was this display that stoked my anger. Together, they returned to her workplace and disappeared inside. Up until this point, Lily hadn't committed any serious wrongdoing, except for not informing me of her actions. She frequently dined with both men and women. But what troubled me most was the seemingly socializing this group displayed during lunch. Two couples, clearly not friends or colleagues, and that concerned me deeply. What struck me as unusual was that on that Friday, Lily didn't join her female colleagues for their post-work gathering. She returned home at 5:15 p.m., cheerful and wearing her usual smile, displaying remarkable self-control. I refrained from bombarding her with questions, but as we sat in front of the TV after dinner, I couldn't resist inquiring about her day at work and her lunch. For a moment, she appeared confused, but she quickly responded. She claimed to have had a tuna sandwich she had prepared that morning before heading to work. A liar, and possibly even a cheater. Despite my mounting anger, I couldn't ignore the urge to embrace her when she looked at me with her beloved blue eyes. Even as she uttered this blatant lie, conflicting emotions surged within me, torn between resentment and an overwhelming desire to hold her close. Such deep love for a person could elicit such emotions. I knew full well that I had to maintain my composure and self-control so as not to act impulsively and later regret my actions. Instead of pursuing her with questions, I made a conscious choice to change the subject and discuss my own workday. I attempted to behave as I normally did during our weekends together. Lily didn't seem to sense the gravity of the situation. Furthermore, that evening, we exchanged hot words twice, and she behaved as affectionately as ever, like a loving wife. During our vacation, we decided to take our daughters to the zoo to create cherished family memories. For a while, I forgot about the events of the past week, and our day was filled with laughter and joy. Throughout the week, I refrained from monitoring her whereabouts during lunch, as I planned to track her down on Friday evening after work. When my daughters returned home at 3:15 on Friday, I was already there and eagerly awaited their return. I ordered pizza for them, ensuring their happiness, and explained that I had some business at the office. I left them both. My daughters had become quite independent, and I calmly left them alone in the house, provided they locked the doors. I knew they would be sound asleep in their room by the time I got back. Without hesitation, I got into the car and headed to Lily's workplace, arriving there at 5 o'clock. Observing from a distance, I noticed how she drove out of the parking lot, heading in the opposite direction of our house, indicating her intention to meet her friends at the pub for an evening party. It was not difficult to follow her unnoticed, as a line of 6 cars served as a convenient shield for my car. En route, my wife's Toyota seamlessly merged with other cars heading to various venues like a pub, a gathering place, or a dance hall, depending on one's perspective. 10 minutes later, I spotted Lily's Toyota, along with 6 other cars, entering the parking lot adjacent to an establishment known as the Glass Shoe, which uniquely combined a bar and a restaurant. Choosing to remain discreet, I parked the car at the far end of the parking lot, carefully observing the surroundings from the side. After everyone entered the establishment, I exited the car and took a leisurely stroll around the vicinity. It seemed prudent to gather as much information as possible about the place my wife frequented. The pub stood a distance away from other buildings, surrounded on all sides by a parking lot. 2 of its walls faced the street as the pub occupied a corner space, while the other 2 sides were marked by a neatly trimmed cedar fence standing 5 feet high, in front of which parking spaces were available. At that point, I noticed a black BMW from the group, the same one Lily had used to go to the restaurant the previous Friday. Surprisingly, it was now parked prominently in front of the cedar hedge, distinguishing it from the other cars parked outside the building. Upon closer examination, I realized that the building had 2 different entrances, one leading to the restaurant and the other to a bar situated at the back. Both the bar and the restaurant had fire doors intended strictly for emergencies. On the opposite side, where most of the cars were parked, there was an additional entrance. Moreover, there was another entrance leading to the bar, but Lily's company did not use it. Instead, they chose the entrance leading to the restaurant part of the building. Returning to the car, I retrieved the attire I had prepared for this occasion. Swiftly, I changed into a black windbreaker, donned a baseball cap, and put on glasses to alter my appearance. Finally, I inserted a protective prosthesis into my mouth to slightly modify my facial features, similar to a boxer's mouthguard. Despite its hindrance to speech and drinking, I paid no heed because my intention was not to engage in conversation or consume beverages. Glancing at my reflection in the rearview mirror, I reassured myself that I would remain unrecognizable. After patiently waiting for another hour in the car, I finally entered the bar. I spotted a group including my wife, sitting together near the dance floor enjoying drinks and having a good time. Among them were 6 women and 4 men, including my wife. Upon noticing that my wife was sitting in proximity to the same man she had dinner with the previous Friday, a wave of sadness and disappointment overwhelmed me. I couldn't shake the suspicion that there was something between them. Deciding to distance myself from the situation, I chose a table in the far corner, as far away from them as possible. From my vantage point, I began to closely observe the unfolding events. The spot I selected was dimly lit, occupied by several individuals nursing their sorrows, much like me. I was confident that no one would pay attention to me in this corner. In less than a few minutes, music began to play, luring people to the dance floor. Before I could turn away, I witnessed Lily dancing with a man seated next to her. Strange smiles appeared on the faces of the remaining 3 men at the table as they watched Lily and her partner dance. It became evident to me that Lily and this man were more than mere acquaintances, and everyone nearby was witnessing their dance. Several hours passed, and their group dwindled to Lily, another woman, and 2 men. Eventually, both couples found themselves on the dance floor, leaving no doubt to all present that my wife and this man were lovers. He drew Lily closer, placing his hands on her waist. They swayed on the dance floor with subtle movements, their bodies pressed closely together. In that moment, I witnessed him leaning down to kiss her, whispering something in her ear. I observed her nodding in response, and without hesitation, they left the room hand in hand. Intrigued, I discreetly followed them out into the dark street. I watched them walk hand in hand to his car. Keeping my distance, I observed them enter the back seat. It became clear why he had parked the car in the last row of the parking lot near the cedar hedge. He sought privacy and the absence of prying eyes. With no other cars nearby, the hedge acted as a shield for his vehicle, and he likely felt secure in that location. Curiosity consumed me as I contemplated their intentions. How far was Lily willing to go? Determined to uncover the truth, I cautiously headed to the opposite end of the parking lot. Stealthily, I made my way between parked cars, striving to remain unnoticed. Before I knew it, I was positioned next to the back of his black car. Initially, I noticed an absence of people inside. It crossed my mind that they were likely in the back seat. In the dim light near the hedge, I was certain they wouldn't spot me from inside the car. So I cautiously moved closer and leaned towards one of the rear windows. Unfortunately, the heavily tinted windows made it impossible to see anything. Despite the poor visibility, I could still hear muffled voices from inside the car. I wrestled with the decision of whether to intervene immediately and rescue her, or wait and catch Lily in the act of betrayal. The choice tormented me, but there was no time to make up my mind. As fate would have it, the car started rocking in rhythm with the music, which, to my dismay, happened to be my wife's favorite. My anger overwhelmed me, and without thinking, I yanked the door handle and flooded the car with light from the roof lantern. To my horror, I discovered my beloved wife, Lily, lying on her back with her lover atop her. They were engaged in their illicit activities. I quietly removed my glasses and the denture that concealed my true identity. As the car's interior lit up, Lily's eyes widened in shock and recognition. In seconds, her expression shifted from joy to utter disbelief. After a brief moment, she spoke, her voice trembling and uncertain. "Oh my God, Ron, please forgive me," she muttered. "Don't rush into decisions you'll regret. It meant nothing to me. Just wait for me." I closed the door firmly behind me and swiftly headed to my car. As I drove away from the parking lot, Lily was already chasing after me, urgently pleading for me to wait. Less than 5 minutes later, she arrived home in a disheveled state, tears filling her eyes. "Oh my God, honey, I'm so sorry," she pleaded. "I love you more than anything in the world. I understand that I hurt you, Lily. You broke our marriage vows. In our 15 years together, I've never betrayed you. If I'd known you were cheating, maybe I'd have sought comfort elsewhere too. If fidelity doesn't matter in our marriage, perhaps I'd have sought fleeting pleasures. I said, my voice laced with anger. Ron, please hear me out. I love you with all my heart. What I did didn't matter to me at all. I wish I could turn back time and fix everything. But it's impossible. You have to believe that you are my world. If you compare my life with yours and our 2 daughters, it doesn't matter at all. Tears streamed down her face as she struggled to contain her emotions, burying her face in her hands as if searching for salvation. Eventually, her legs gave way and she sank onto the sofa, continuing to express her remorse repeatedly. Stop apologizing, I said sternly. What you did to our marriage is unforgivable. Tell me who he is and how long this betrayal has been going on, I said, relieved that she was no longer standing right in front of me. My anger surged as I grabbed her by the neck and shook her, an unfamiliar rage taking hold of me. His name is Nick, she confessed, her voice trembling. He's a colleague from the studio. This shouldn't have happened. Please believe that I love you more than anything. But then a terrible thought crossed my mind. But you must admit your deception, I retorted. You've been lying to me about your outings with friends while secretly seeing him for years. Do you expect me to believe you haven't been deceiving me all this time? In a panic, she exclaimed, Oh my God, no, this happened only recently. Please believe me. My love for you has only grown stronger over time. I beg for your forgiveness and understanding. There was never any genuine love in my actions. Tears welled up in her eyes again, her disheveled appearance and swollen red eyes reflecting the gravity of the situation. She pleaded for forgiveness. No, you don't grasp the seriousness of this situation, I replied, disappointment evident in my voice. Think about your colleagues who witnessed your affair. Think about us. Consider how others will perceive us if they see us together, whether on the street or at the office. It's not just a secret affair anymore. It's a blatant display of infidelity. You've publicly betrayed me. I'm sorry, but I can't bear this humiliation, and I want a divorce. I was resolute in my decision to end our marriage. Ron, please, I'm begging you, forgive me. You know I can't live without you. Please reconsider. I'm genuinely asking for your forgiveness. I promise it won't happen again. Right now, our priority is saving our marriage and protecting our family. As she spoke, I stood up and turned away, needing some solitude to think about our relationship. Lily, our marriage started falling apart when you chose to be unfaithful. The consequences we're facing today stem from that betrayal. Suddenly, a sharp scream pierced the room, followed by sorrowful crying that deeply affected me. When I looked back at Lily, she was on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably with her head in her hands. In that moment, conflicting emotions swirled within me. I wanted to embrace her, offer comfort, but anger and a sense of betrayal prevented me from doing so. I felt incapable of staying close to her, unsure if I could trust myself around her. Silently, I left our home and sought refuge for the night in a hotel room. I couldn't sleep, and my rest was restless and empty. Come morning, I decided to inform my secretary that I wouldn't be coming to work that day. I stayed in my hotel room until noon, pondering the events that had unfolded. Eventually, I managed to work up an appetite and dined sparingly in the hotel restaurant. With a heavy heart, I made my way to the office. Along the way, I couldn't help but glance towards my house. To my dismay, there was a green Toyota parked in front, and this unfamiliar presence heightened my anxiety. I concluded that the green Toyota belonged to Frances, Lily's sister. It was somewhat comforting to think that, in addition to their unfaithful mother, my daughters could rely on their aunt for support. However, I was still unaware of Lily's deteriorating condition. After I left home the previous evening, Lily had confided in her sister over the phone. The severity of the situation overwhelmed her, leading to a sudden breakdown. Now she was in the hospital, grappling with the aftermath of her emotional breakdown. It wasn't until I arrived at my office that I received the news. I received a call from Lily's sister, Francine, and we had a lengthy conversation. According to her, Lily was in an extremely critical condition, constantly in tears and anxious. What shocked me was that less than an hour after I had left the previous evening, my elder daughter had reached out to Francine, informing her that Lily was delusional and I was absent. After their conversation, Francine hurried to my house and witnessed the dire state of her sister. Recognizing the gravity of the situation, she wasted no time in calling an ambulance for emergency medical assistance. Francine assured me that she would stay at my house to care for and support my two daughters during this challenging time. She strongly urged me to visit my wife at Santa Maria City Hospital. When our conversation ended, I was overwhelmed by shock. I realized how selfish and dismissive I had been the night before. The weight of my actions, or lack thereof, weighed heavily on me. Did I truly decide to leave my home, abandoning my daughters and wife when they needed support the most? Maybe. But one thing was clear to me. If I had stayed with her that evening, there was a disturbing possibility, however small, that my emotions could have led to cruelty due to the immense pain caused by her actions. While she may have played a significant role in the breakdown of our marriage, I had never considered myself a person who ignored problems or avoided facing them directly until yesterday. Was that what I did? In this situation, Lily and I were confronted with a monumental issue, certainly a significant one. But was leaving my family when they needed me the most the only way to justify my decision? Regret and guilt overwhelmed me, intensifying my sense of sadness. Tears streamed down my face as I hid behind the table. Deep down, I wondered if there might have been an alternative path, a path of forgiveness, reconciliation, and perhaps even a distant chance to salvage what remained of our relationship. Of course, the fact that we were in this situation was the result of Lily's actions. She bore full responsibility for betraying the sacred trust that should have been reserved solely for me. But the thought of ending our marriage weighed heavily on my heart, knowing it would cause great pain to my two beloved daughters. It became evident that I needed to explore an alternative solution, and I contemplated the idea of forgiveness. Gradually, as I processed the shocking news of Lily's hospitalization, I found a renewed determination. Without hesitation, I got behind the wheel and raced to the hospital, determined to uncover the truth about her actions and understand the situation. Doubt filled my mind, and I entered the hospital without a clear plan or knowing what I would say to Lily. But one thing remained certain. I was determined to seek the truth. As I sat in the hospital, I reflected on a piece of wisdom my mother had once imparted to me. Cheaters always eventually face the consequences of their actions. This idea still lingers in my mind as I think back to my wife's betrayal when she was just 20 years old. Lily and I got married, and our once happy marriage seemed like a dream come true. Our two beloved daughters brought us joy, and our comfortable home in a lovely neighborhood was a symbol of contentment. We didn't have financial troubles, and most importantly, our love was undeniable. However, life took an unexpected turn when, shortly after our younger daughter turned 6, Lily landed a job at a nearby film studio. With her proficiency in multiple foreign languages, she secured a position as a film translator. Her work as a voice translator was truly impressive, providing us with financial stability due to her impeccable skills. For 5 years, my wife excelled in her role until a new translator arrived. This tall, charismatic, blonde-haired colleague quickly became the center of attention among the studio staff. Despite the many admirers he had, he seemed oblivious to their affection. He shared Lily's proficiency in various foreign languages, leading to frequent encounters at work and the blossoming of a friendship that soon deepened. Herein lay the problem that troubled my wife's heart. Love surreptitiously crept into her emotions before she fully comprehended it, leaving her in a state of confusion. Before long, she realized she had fallen for him. Initially, he treated her no differently than other coworkers, focusing on work-related matters and maintaining a professional rapport. But when he began joining their bi-weekly outings, a subtle shift occurred. Gradually, they crossed the line from professional collaboration to a deep friendship. They confided in each other and shared the intricacies of their lives. Lily never discussed any of this with me. Soon, he became a regular presence at gatherings and dinners among their female colleagues. Her first mistake was not informing me when men started attending their gatherings. With time, their connection evolved into something more profound. On the dance floor, swaying to slow songs, they felt like a single entity. However, I remained oblivious to the depth of their relationship. In a dimly lit corner of the dance floor, Lily found herself locked in his embrace, and their lips met in a kiss that was more than just friendly. It was a kiss that shook her to the core. And so a chain of events was set in motion. The following Friday, during one of their outings, he found a reason to take her away from the pub, ultimately leading to a passionate encounter in his car. Their desires grew, and they soon found themselves entangled like wild creatures in the back seat. Overwhelmed by guilt upon returning home, Lily was determined to give me the love and affection I deserved, unaware that as her husband, I deserved unwavering loyalty. However, due to their daily interactions at work, it became increasingly challenging for her to distance herself from him. They had grown too comfortable in each other's presence. But Lily's love for me remained steadfast. I was willing to sacrifice everything for Ron because my love for him remained unshakable. Lily never intended to hurt me through her infidelity, but she was gravely mistaken in believing that her connection with him surpassed the bond we shared. This affair continued for 4 months, and now she lay in a hospital bed revealing all the details of her betrayal. I listened, shedding tears without interruption. Lily vowed to do whatever it took to save our marriage. However, I couldn't decide whether I could live with the memories of her infidelity, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her. After all, my beloved wife was in a fragile emotional and physical state, and I didn't want to inflict further pain on her. So I returned to my hotel room and contacted my lawyer, asking him to prepare the necessary divorce documents. I was deeply concerned about how the divorce would impact Lily's condition. I didn't want her to suffer, but it seemed inevitable. While the divorce papers were being prepared, I spent quality time with my beloved daughters. I didn't plan to seek custody. Instead, Lily and I should jointly raise them, albeit not under the same roof. However, my plans unraveled when my lawyer delivered the divorce papers to Lily, who was still in the hospital. Her emotional state worsened upon learning of the divorce, and that dreadful day marked a turning point for the worse. She suffered a stroke when she realized I had initiated divorce proceedings. When her doctor informed me of this, I began to despise myself. I should have waited to proceed with the divorce until Lily had fully recovered. I spent 3 days by her side, holding her hand. Lily's condition deteriorated, and even after 2 months she only showed partial improvement. She was left paralyzed on her left side, and it was a heartbreaking situation for all of us. I blamed myself entirely, but at the same time I understood that if Lily hadn't engaged in a secret affair with her colleague, none of this would have happened. No matter how hard I tried to convince myself to stay in the same house with Lily and our daughters, I couldn't do it. Every time I looked at her, I would be reminded of that scene of betrayal in the car. So, I packed my belongings and moved into a nearby rented apartment to stay close to my beautiful daughters. As much as I didn't want it to be this way, it was Lily herself who had turned our once happy life into chaos and suffering.